Rewritten English version. Adrian Whitlock's story. You picked the wrong neighborhood to go exploring, friend. The knee lands between the shoulder blades first, then the full weight, 240 pounds of uniformed authority, pressing a man's face into sun-heated concrete on a sun-heated afternoon. A torn jacket sleeve, a leather notebook skidding 3 feet across the sidewalk, pages fluttering open to handwriting no one bothers to read. The officer on top grabs the man's wrist, wrenches it behind his back. The cuff clicks once. Too tight. Metal biting into skin that hasn't committed a crime. Across the street, a woman on her porch holds up her phone, recording. Her hands are shaking, but the phone is steady. And soon, every officer on this shift will learn something about this man that will make their hands shake too. But by then, the footage will already be uploaded, the reports already filed, the damage already done. And the only question left will be how many careers end, because no one on that sidewalk asked one simple question before the handcuffs closed. Who are you? They never asked. And that silence, that arrogant, incurious silence, is about to cost them everything. But that reckoning is still ahead. Right now, the concrete is warm, the knee is heavy, and the man underneath it is doing something strange. He is not screaming, he is not struggling, he is breathing in counts of 4. Inhale, hold, exhale, hold. The way someone breathes when they have been trained to manage what the body does under pressure. The way someone breathes when they know this moment is temporary, even if the injustice is not. His name is Adrian Whitlock. But the officers above him do not know that yet. They do not know anything about him except the color of his skin and the neighborhood he chose to walk through. And based on those 2 facts alone, they have already decided everything they think they need to decide. The notebook lies open on the concrete, its pages ruffling in a breeze that smells like cut grass and entitlement. The name printed at the top is unreadable from where the officers stand. It will be readable soon enough. If this deeply satisfying justice story already has your attention, make sure you're subscribed, because what happens in a period of time is something you genuinely will not see coming. Earlier, Adrian Whitlock steps off a regional flight at Charlotte Douglas International Airport, carrying 1 suitcase, 1 garment bag, and the kind of quiet exhaustion that accumulates over many years of being excellent in rooms that expected him to fail. He is 46 years old, 6 feet tall, built like someone who runs 4 miles every morning regardless of weather, schedule, or the particular variety of institutional resistance the day has placed in front of him. His hair is cut close. His watch is modest, a Timex with a leather band, not the kind of timepiece that announces wealth or demands attention. His shoes are polished, but not new. His jacket is well fitted, but not tailored. Everything about his appearance says deliberate, without saying expensive. He collects his rental car, a mid-range sedan, dark blue, nothing memorable, and drives east toward the No-Day Arts District, where an extended-stay hotel sits between a tattoo shop and a brewery. He chose this location specifically, not downtown, not the suburbs, the in-between space where a black man in a dark jacket carrying a camera does not automatically trigger someone's anxiety response. Or so he thought. He checks in then, room 214, second floor, facing the parking lot. Inside, he unpacks with the kind of precision that suggests either military training or obsessive personality, and the line between those 2 categories is thinner than most people realize. Shirts hung by color, darkest left, lightest right. Shoes aligned at the foot of the closet, heels touching the wall. Toiletries arranged on the bathroom counter in order of use: razor, shaving cream, toothbrush, toothpaste, deodorant, each item placed exactly 2 finger widths apart. He opens a worn leather notebook, the kind with an elastic band closure and pages that show years of contact with pens pressed hard enough to leave impressions 2 sheets deep. He writes in block letters, small and neat, the date at the top of a fresh page. That day, Charlotte. Arrived. Below that, a list of streets and intersections he plans to walk over the next week with notes beside each one. Distance to transit. Stop, sidewalk condition, lighting, commercial density, residential character. He is studying this city, learning its bones. But no one who sees him on these walks will understand what he is doing or why. They will see a black man moving slowly through spaces where black men are not expected to linger, and they will fill in the blanks with their own assumptions. The following morning, Adrian begins. He walks south from Nodai toward the courthouse district, following 4th Street, past office buildings and construction sites, and the kind of mixed-use developments that signal a neighborhood rewriting its own history. He carries the leather notebook and a camera with a wide-angle lens. He photographs crosswalks, bus stops, the distance between streetlights. He pauses at intersections and writes things down. How long the pedestrian signal lasts, whether the sidewalk is ADA compliant, whether there are benches. At a coffee shop in the Dilworth neighborhood, he orders a black coffee. The barista, early 20s, white, tattooed forearms, takes his order, smiles, moves to the espresso machine. 3 other customers come in after Adrian. All white. All receive their drinks before he does. When his coffee finally arrives, the barista looks mildly embarrassed. Not guilty, just aware enough to notice the gap, without being aware enough to have prevented it. Adrian takes his coffee to a corner table, sits, and writes in his notebook. He does not complain, does not comment, he documents. That evening he walks a different route, a residential neighborhood near the Quail Hollow area, mixed but trending affluent, the kind of zip code where houses jump $50,000 in value every time a new restaurant opens. A woman walking a golden retriever spots Adrian on the opposite sidewalk. She crosses to his side of the street, then immediately crosses back, taking the long way around to avoid sharing concrete with him. Her dog looks confused by the unnecessary detour. Her face does not. Adrian notes this in his notebook. Time, location, direction of travel, one line, avoidance crossing, no eye contact. He does this every day for a while, walking, photographing, writing. He maps the city the way a doctor reads a patient's chart, looking for symptoms, for patterns, for the places where infrastructure and intention diverge. On that day, he walks through a neighborhood called Briarcliff Estates, 12 blocks of restored colonial houses, manicured lawns that require weekly professional attention. An HOA newsletter published monthly with sections titled Community Vigilance and Report Suspicious Activity and Protecting Our Property Values. American flags on every third porch positioned at exactly the angle prescribed by the association's exterior standards document. Adrian enters from the south end. The sidewalk is wider here than in the neighborhoods he walked the day before, better maintained. The trees are mature oaks, their canopy providing shade that feels deliberate, designed, landscaped, curated. At the corner of Magnolia Lane and Briarcliff Drive, he finds what he has been looking for: a historical marker, bronze plaque, mounted on a stone pedestal, maintained by the Mecklenburg County Historic Landmarks Commission. The marker reads, "This site was formerly the location of the Lincoln Heights community, established 1891 by freed persons. Approximately 340 residents were displaced between that year and that year through municipal land acquisition proceedings. No compensation was provided to 127 of the displaced families." Adrian photographs the marker, front, side, close-up of the text. He opens his notebook and copies the key phrases in his block letters. Then he sits on the low stone wall beside the marker and continues writing. He does not know that a woman named Marla Whitcomb is watching him from her kitchen window across the street. Marla is 47 years old, white. President of the Briarcliff Estates Homeowners Association for 6 consecutive years, married to a corporate attorney whose name appears on the letterhead of a firm that handles real estate disputes and zoning appeals. She runs the Neighborhood Watch Slack channel with the focused intensity of someone who believes vigilance is the only thing standing between civilization and whatever she imagines the alternative to be. 3 alerts in the past month on that Slack channel: a landscaper who lingered too long near the Garrison property after completing his work, a driver who parked his van for a while without visible delivery activity, a teenager who appeared lost and was circling the block. All 3 were black. All 3 were doing their jobs or minding their business. None of the alerts resulted in police action, but they accomplished their real purpose: reinforcing the unspoken agreement among residents about who belongs and who does not. Marla watches Adrian through the window above her kitchen sink. She does not recognize him. He's not wearing a contractor's uniform. He is not carrying packages. He is not pushing a stroller or walking a dog, or doing any of the things that would give his presence an explanation she can accept without discomfort. He is sitting on a wall near her street writing in a notebook, and he has been there for, she checks her watch, a period of time. She picks up her phone, but not today. Today she posts to the Slack channel instead. Unknown individual, black male, dark jacket, camera, notebook. Sitting on the wall by the historical marker. Been there 20+ minutes. Anyone know who this is? 7 replies in a period of time. None identify him. 2 suggest calling the non-emergency police line. 1 from a retired engineer named Franklin who lives alone at the end of Magnolia Lane writes he's on a public sidewalk next to a public marker. Leave the man alone. Franklin's message receives no reactions. The suggestion to call police receives 4 thumbs-up emojis. Adrian leaves Briarcliff, then unaware that his photograph taken through a kitchen window, grainy, showing nothing more than a man sitting on a wall, has already been shared among 31 households, whose primary qualification for making judgments about him is the proximity of their mortgages. He returns to his hotel room, hangs his jacket, aligns his shoes, opens his notebook to a fresh page, and writes Briarcliff, historical marker, Lincoln Heights. Displacement, well-maintained. Community appears engaged but insular. Note security cameras on 8 of 12 houses visible from marker location. Ring doorbells on at least 5 front doors. Then below that in smaller letters, return that day for additional documentation. He does not know that that day will be the day everything changes. That day begins with rain that clears by noon, leaving the streets shining and the air carrying that particular post-storm freshness that makes people want to be outside. Adrian eats breakfast at the hotel, coffee, oatmeal, half a grapefruit, and reviews his notebook while the morning news plays at low volume on the television he barely watches. By then, the sun has dried the sidewalks. Adrian pulls on his dark jacket, the same one he has worn every day this week, chosen for its deep pockets that hold the notebook, a pen, his phone, and a spare battery for the camera, and drives to Briarcliff Estates. He parks on a public street 2 blocks from the historical marker, walks south along the sidewalk with the camera hanging from a strap around his neck and the notebook in his left hand. He is not hurrying. He is not loitering. He is moving at the pace of someone who is paying attention to the world around him, which in certain neighborhoods is the most suspicious thing a black man can do. When he reaches the historical marker, sits on the same low stone wall, opens his notebook, begins photographing the surrounding intersection from different angles than he used earlier. Wider shots showing the relationship between the marker and the houses that replace the community it memorializes. Soon after, Marla Whitcomb calls 911. The call is logged. Mecklenburg County Emergency Communications logs the call. Duration several minutes. Dispatcher Dana Rusk. Badge 662911. What is your emergency? I need to report a suspicious person. There's a black male walking through Briarcliff Estates. He's been here before. He has a camera and he's photographing houses. He's wearing all dark clothing and he's carrying some kind of bag or... No, it's a notebook. But he doesn't live here. He doesn't belong here. Ma'am, is this individual threatening anyone? He's looking at things. Is he on private property? He's on the sidewalk, but he's clearly casing the neighborhood. He was here earlier doing the same thing. Just sitting there writing things down, taking pictures. I'm telling you something is not right. Ma'am, has he attempted to enter any property or approach any residence? No, but I'll dispatch a unit for a welfare check. Can you describe his location? 1200 block of Magnolia Lane, by the sign the historical marker thing. The dispatcher codes, it's suspicious person on foot, no weapons observed, no threats reported. Welfare check low priority. But low priority becomes something else when the call is assigned to Unit 14. Unit 14 is Officer Barrett Hale, badge 4981. Many years on the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Police Department. Former college football player, defensive line at Appalachian State. Good enough for a scholarship, but not for the draft. 6 feet 3 inches, 240 pounds, the kind of physical presence that fills doorways and ends conversations. His partner today is Officer Talia Monroe, badge 603. 124 years old. A period of time on the force. She joined because the recruitment video showed officers playing basketball with kids at a community center, and she thought genuinely and without cynicism that this was what the job would be. A period of time have complicated that belief considerably. Her body camera is activated as required by departmental policy, adopted under the city's that year consent decree. They arrive then. Yeah. Adrian hears the patrol car before he sees it. The tires on the wet, dry pavement make a sound like tearing cloth. He does not look up immediately. He finishes the sentence he is writing in his notebook, then raises his head with the controlled calm of someone who has been through this calculation before. Am I sitting or standing? Are my hands visible? Is my posture neutral? Is my face composed? The mental checklist that many white men in America have never needed to perform while sitting on a bench near his own house. He watches the two officers exit the vehicle, the man first, then the woman. The man leads. He always leads. His shoulders are set forward, chin slightly raised, weight on the balls of his feet. The posture of someone who approaches situations expecting resistance and would be disappointed by cooperation. The woman hangs back 2 paces. Her hand rests near her belt. Her eyes scan the area with professional attention, but her face carries something the man's does not. Uncertainty. The gap between training and reality visible in the tension around her jaw. I need you to stay seated. The officer's voice arrives before his shadow does. Keep your hands where I can see them. Adrian's hands are already visible. They have been visible this entire time. One holding a pen, the other resting on the open notebook. He does not move them, does not adjust. Simply holds still, with the practiced patience of someone who understands that stillness is the safest posture a black man can offer a nervous officer. Afternoon, Adrian says. His voice is even, neither friendly nor hostile, calibrated. We got a call about a suspicious individual in this area. The officer stops 4 feet away, close enough to control, far enough to react. His name tag reads Hale. Someone matching your description? And what description is that? The question lands cleanly. Hale's jaw shifts. A micro-expression of irritation at being asked to articulate the thing he would rather leave implicit. Black male? Dark clothing? Camera? Taking photographs of residences? I'm photographing a historical marker. Adrian nods toward the bronze plaque 3 feet to his left. It's maintained by Mecklenburg County. It's a public installation on a public right-of-way, and I'm sitting on a public sidewalk. The woman Officer Monroe, her name tag reads, glances at the marker. She reads it. Her expression shifts slightly, the way someone's face changes when information disrupts a narrative they were told to accept. Hale does not look at the marker. He does not need to. He has already decided what is happening here, and a bronze plaque about displaced black families is not relevant to his assessment. I'm going to need to see some ID. I'd like to understand your procedure here, Officer Hale. Adrian's voice does not change pitch, does not accelerate. Am I being detained? I'm asking for identification, and I'm asking whether I'm being detained or I'm free to go. Those are different situations with different legal requirements. Something changes in Hale's posture. He is used to compliance, used to the stammer and the scramble for a wallet and the nervous explanation. Calm throws off the script. Vocabulary throws it off further. A man who asks about procedure and legal requirements is not the man Hale prepared himself to encounter during the 90-second drive from the precinct. Here's what's going to happen. Hale steps closer, shrinking the space between authority and the man it is being exercised upon. You're going to show me some ID. I'm going to run it. If everything checks out, you're free to go. If you want to make this difficult, I can make it difficult too. Monroe shifts her weight. Her body camera is recording. Has been recording since they exited the vehicle. Badge number 6031. The timestamp captures everything. Every word, every gesture, every choice. I have a valid North Carolina identification card in my jacket pocket, Adrian says. I'm going to reach for it slowly. My right hand, interior pocket. He moves with exaggerated care. The kind of slow-announced movement that no one should have to perform to avoid being shot while reaching for their own wallet. He produces the ID and holds it out between two fingers. Hale takes it, studies it. Adrian Whitlock. The address is a hotel, not a residence. Recently issued. You don't live here, don't? Not a question. I didn't say I did. Where do you live? I'm staying at the Morrison Suites in Noda. I moved to Charlotte recently. From where? Is that relevant to whatever suspicious activity you're investigating? Hale's hand moves to his radio, not to his weapon, to the radio. The gesture of a man who wants backup, not because the situation requires it, but because his authority is being questioned by someone who is not performing the deference he expects. Unit 14 requesting a supervisor at my location, 1200 block Magnolia Lane, Briarcliff Estates. Monroe's eyes widen slightly. A supervisor call means this is escalating. She looks at Adrian. Seated, hands visible, ID already surrendered, no aggressive posture, no raised voice, no resistance of any kind. And she sees what anyone watching this footage later will see. A man being punished for asking questions while black. Sergeant Everett Knox arrives in a period of time. He exits his vehicle the way a man exits a building he owns, with the proprietary confidence of someone who believes his authority extends to every surface his boots touch. Many years on the force, technical proficiency, his weapon of choice. Where Hale overwhelms with size, Knox overwhelms with procedure. The bureaucratic machinery of policing turned into a blunt instrument. He approaches Hale first, not Adrian. He receives Hale's account without walking the 15 feet required to hear the other side. This is the first procedural failure, and it happens so naturally that neither officer recognizes it as a failure at all. Sir. Knox turns to Adrian. My officer has articulated concern regarding your presence in this area, based on the caller's report, and your what concern specifically? Adrian has not moved from the wall. His hands are still visible. His voice carries the same calibrated neutrality it has carried since the first officer spoke. I'd like to hear the specific criminal activity I'm suspected of committing. Knox blinks. The word specifically lands like a pin dropping in a quiet room. Precise, small, impossible to ignore. He is not used to civilians who parse language with surgical attention. The caller reported an individual photographing private residences. I was photographing a public historical marker. Officer Hale is holding my ID. You're welcome to examine my camera's memory card. Every photograph on it is of public property. Knox does not examine the camera, does not ask to see the photographs. Instead, he reaches for the notebook, the leather-bound notebook that has been sitting on Adrian's knee this entire time, open to a page of block letter observations about sidewalk conditions and street light placement. Adrian pulls it back, not aggressively, reflexively, the way anyone pulls back when a stranger reaches for something personal without asking. That's mine. That's, sir, I need to examine. You need probable cause to examine my personal property. What crime do you have probable cause to believe I've committed? Knox's radio crackles. Hale, who has been running Adrian's information through the system, reports back. ID comes back clean, no warrants, no record, new to the area. ID issued earlier, new ID. Knox's eyes narrow. No local history, no employment record in our system. Recently arrived with no established address. I provided my current address, the Morrison Suites, room 214. That's a hotel. Transient accommodation consistent with the caller's concern about someone unfamiliar in the area. Consistent with someone who recently moved to a new city. Adrian's jaw tightens. The first visible crack in his composure. Not anger, frustration. The specific frustration of a man who knows exactly what is happening and knows exactly how powerless knowing makes him in this particular moment. I've provided valid government-issued identification. My record is clean. I'm sitting on a public sidewalk. Under what authority are you extending this detention, Sergeant? The question hangs in the cool air. Knox does not answer it. Instead, he reaches for Adrian's notebook again, this time faster, this time with the weight of rank behind the gesture. Adrian's hand closes around it. For 1 second, maybe two men hold the same object, and the power dynamic of the entire encounter is compressed into the tension between their grips. Knox wins. He is bigger, and he is wearing a uniform, and the unspoken rule of American policing is that any contest of wills between an officer and a civilian ends one way. He pulls the notebook free, flips it open, scans the pages without reading them. His eyes move across the block letters the way someone scans a foreign language. The information is there, but he does not have the context to understand it. Surveillance notes, Knox says, holding the notebook up for Hale to see. Observations about public infrastructure. Sidewalk conditions, transit access, streetlight intervals. Nothing classified, nothing illegal. We'll determine what's legal. Knox closes the notebook and hands it to Hale. Bag it. Adrian watches Hale slide his notebook into a clear evidence bag. His notebook, a period of time of work, every street, every intersection, every detail he has been gathering since he arrived in Charlotte, sealed in plastic and labeled with a case number that will follow him through a system designed to convert inconvenience into criminality. I want to make a formal objection to the seizure of my personal property, Adrian says, for the record, and for Officer Monroe body camera. Monroe flinches. She had hoped no one would draw attention to the camera. Acknowledging it makes everything that happens next official, documented, reviewable. Knox ignores the objection. Sir, you're being detained for investigative purposes. I'm asking you to come with us to the precinct for further identification verification. My identification has been verified. Your own officer confirmed it. Clean record, no warrants, valid ID. New ID, no employment record, no local contacts. I'm not satisfied the identification process is complete. Adrian stands, slowly, hands visible, every movement announced. I'd like to call an attorney. You can make calls from the precinct. Knox nods to Hale. Transport. The ride to the precinct takes a period of time. Adrian sits in the back of Hale's patrol car, hands not cuffed, not yet, but the partition between front and back seats makes the distinction academic. He is separated from freedom by a sheet of plexiglass, and the unchecked discretion of two officers who have decided, based on nothing, that his presence in their jurisdiction requires investigation. Monroe follows in a second vehicle. Her body camera is still recording. Hale drives in silence for the first a period of time. Then, without turning his head, he speaks through the partition grate. You know what your problem is? Adrian does not answer. Your problem is You think asking smart questions makes you untouchable. It doesn't. It makes you memorable. And in my experience, memorable is not what you want to be. The words hang in the air-conditioned space between them. Hale adjusts his rear-view mirror, not to see the road behind him, but to see Adrian's face, to see whether the threat registered, to see whether the calm has cracked. It has not. At the North Division Precinct, Adrian is processed through what Knox calls extended identification verification, a procedure that, as far as Adrian can tell, does not exist in any written policy he will later be able to locate. His camera is taken, his phone is taken, his wallet, already checked at the scene, is taken again. Each item is logged on a property receipt form. Adrian watches the booking officer fill in the entries and notices that the form lists his camera, but does not specify the memory card. He says nothing about this. Not yet. He is placed in an interview room, not a cell technically, but the door is closed and the handle does not turn from the inside, which makes the distinction philosophical at best. He waits. He sits with his back straight and his hands on his knees, perfectly still, except for the slow rhythm of his breathing. 4 counts in, 4 counts held, 4 counts out, 4 counts held. 4. His pulse does not spike. His expression does not change. He has been in rooms like this before, rooms where power sits on one side of a table and patience sits on the other, and the outcome depends on which one blinks first. This story is about to take a turn that no one in that precinct saw coming. If you haven't already, hit subscribe, because what Adrian does next changes everything. Then, an hour and later initial contact, Knox enters the interview room. Mr. Whitlock, your ID checks out. No criminal history, no outstanding warrants, no flags. I told you that then this afternoon. I had to verify independently. You've verified. Am I free to go? Knox sits down across from him, folds his hands on the table, in a gesture of false camaraderie, the posture of a man who wants a conversation to feel casual while maintaining total control of its direction. I'd like to understand what you were doing in Briarcliff. You said you moved here recently. What do you do for work? Am I required to answer that question? I'm asking, and I'm declining. I've been cooperative. I've provided identification. You've confirmed I have no record. There is no legal basis for continued detention. I'd like my property returned, and I'd like to leave. Knox studies him. The evaluation is visible. The sergeant is recalculating. This man does not fit any of the templates Knox's experience has provided. He is not belligerent, which eliminates the combative detainee protocol. He is not frightened, which eliminates the compliance through intimidation approach. He is calm, articulate, aware of his rights, and this is the part that bothers Knox most, apparently unimpressed by the authority being exercised over him. You're free to go, Mr. Whitlock. Adrian stands. My property, at the desk. He walks to the booking desk. His camera, phone, and wallet are returned. He signs the property receipt, then pauses, reads it again. His eyes stop on line 7. My notebook isn't listed on the return inventory. The booking officer checks the screen. Shows here as held for investigative review. There is no investigation. I've been cleared and released. Take it up with the sergeant. Adrian does not take it up with the sergeant. He takes the receipt, folds it precisely, places it in his jacket pocket, and walks out of the precinct into the afternoon sun. His notebook, pages of handwritten observations, every street and intersection and community he has mapped since arriving in Charlotte, remains inside the building, logged, filed, held. He drives back to the Morrison Suites, parks, sits in the car for a while without moving. Then he opens the glove compartment, removes a second notebook, identical to the first, same leather cover, same elastic band, and begins writing. Date, officers' names, badge numbers, sequence of events, every word he can remember from every exchange. He fills 7 pages. His block letters are smaller than usual, the handwriting of a man pressing harder than he means to. At the bottom of the 7th page, he writes one sentence in capitals. Return to document, bring a witness. Then he closes the notebook, goes inside, hangs his jacket, aligns his shoes, and stands in the shower for a while without moving. The water runs and runs. That day, morning. Adrian does not walk the city. He sits in his hotel room and makes 3 phone calls. The first is to a civil rights attorney in Charlotte. He does not give her all the details, just enough to establish standing. He was detained. His property was seized. He wants to file a FOIA request for the body camera footage from the encounter. The second call is to a number he dials from memory. He speaks for a while. The conversation is not audible, but when he hangs up, his expression carries a particular kind of resolve. The look of someone who has made a decision that will create consequences they are prepared to accept. The third call goes to voicemail. He leaves a message. Curtis, it's Adrian Whitlock. We met briefly at New Hope AME on that day. I could use your help with something. It involves Briarcliff Estates, a historical marker, and the way this city treats people who look like us when we walk through neighborhoods we're supposed to have the right to be in. Call me when you can. Reverend Amos Reed returns the call then. They meet at a diner near the university. Adrian tells the full story. Reed, 61, silver-haired, built like a man who carried heavy things for a living before he carried heavy burdens for a calling, listens without interrupting. When Adrian finishes, Reed sets his coffee down and says, "How many times have you been stopped?" "In my life? In this city? Twice now." "Once on that day, a woman crossed the street to avoid me. That's not a stop, but it's the same impulse, and the detention on that day." "And before Charlotte?" Adrian is quiet for a moment, enough to know the pattern. "What do you want to happen?" "I want my notebook back. I want the body camera footage, and I want to return to that sidewalk and finish what I was doing, which is documenting public infrastructure that affects the people who live in this city." Reed nods slowly. "I'll go with you." "That's what I was hoping." "When?" "Soon, in broad daylight." But before that day arrives, something happens at the precinct that Adrian will not learn about until weeks later. Later that day, after Adrian's release, a patrol officer named Nora Callan sits at her desk in the North Division station and opens a supplemental report form on her computer. Case number 2. 025-MK-4471. The same case number assigned to Adrian's detention. Callan is 31, many years on the force. Her reputation is built on meticulous documentation, the kind of officer whose reports read like technical manuals, precise and thorough and nearly impossible to challenge in court. She is also, by nature and by practice, an officer who understands that paperwork is power. A well-crafted report can transform ambiguity into certainty, can make a man reaching for his own notebook into a man reaching for his waistband, can turn a sidewalk conversation into a criminal encounter. She was not present at the Briarcliff stop. She was on patrol 6 miles away at the time of the detention, but she knows Hale, knows Knox, has coordinated with them before on cases where the initial report needed, in the department's polite euphemism, supplemental context. She types, "Supplemental report, case number 2, 025-MK-4471. Filed by Officer J. Callan, badge 2209, date recorded. Subject Whitlock exhibited pre-flight indicators during initial contact, including furtive hand movements toward his waistband area and verbal challenges to officer authority consistent with counter-surveillance behavior. Subject's photographic equipment and written materials suggest possible coordination with unknown parties. Recommend enhanced monitoring of subject's future activity in the Briarcliff patrol zone." She files the report, closes the form, opens her email and sends a one-line message to an address she has used before. Supplemental filed on 4471. Standard language. Let me know if you need anything else. The recipient field shows a name, but that name will not become relevant until much later, when the redactions come and the questions they raise are more disturbing than the answers they conceal. Adrian does not know about Callan's report, does not know that a woman he has never met has just written a document describing him as a potential threat based on fabricated physical descriptions of an encounter she did not witness. He is asleep in room 214, shoes aligned, shirts hung by color, breathing in counts of 4 even in his dreams. Soon after, Adrian and Reverend Amos Reed arrive at Briarcliff Estates then. The day is clear, unusually warm. The kind of afternoon that brings people onto porches and into yards. Reed drives. His car, a 15-year-old Honda Accord with a clergy parking pass on the dashboard and a bumper sticker that reads New Hope AME, all are welcome. Parks on the public street 2 blocks from the historical marker. They walk together. 2 black men, one in a dark jacket with a camera, one in a cardigan with a Bible-worn softness to his hands. Adrian carries a new camera purchased at a Best Buy the day before, and the second leather notebook. He walks directly to the historical marker, sits on the same wall, opens the notebook. "You do this every time?" Reed asks, watching Adrian write the date and time in his block letters. "Every time." "What are you documenting?" "Everything I can." Details that people forget when they testify. Times, locations, angles, conditions. Things that become important when someone tells you what happened and someone else tells you it didn't. Reed sits on the wall beside him. "You sound like you've done this before." "I've been on the receiving end of it before." "That teaches you what to record." This is true. It is also incomplete. But Adrian does not elaborate and Reed does not press. The Reverend has spent many years in ministry, long enough to know that people reveal themselves at their own pace, and the pace is usually inversely proportional to the depth of what they are carrying. Then, a patrol car rounds the corner of Magnolia Lane. Adrian sees it first. His hand pauses mid-sentence. His eyes track the vehicle with the fixed attention of a man cataloging details automatically. Make, model, unit number, speed of approach, direction of turn. The car stops 30 yards away. The engine stays running. Barrett Hale steps out. He is alone this time. No Monroe, no backup. Just Hale, his patrol car, and whatever decision he made in the space between recognizing Adrian's face and opening his driver's door. "You again." Hale crosses the distance between them with the deliberate pace of someone who has already decided how this encounter will end. "I told you this isn't your neighborhood." "This is a public street, Officer Hale." Adrian does not stand, does not change position. His voice is the same temperature it was not long before. Room temperature, the baseline from which deviations can be measured. "I'm within my rights." "And who is this?" Hale looks at Reed the way a man looks at a complication he did not plan for. "Amos Reed," the Reverend says, "pastor at New Hope, AME. I'm here as a witness." "Witness to what?" "To whatever happens next." Hale's hand drops to his belt, not his weapon, his radio, then changes direction, moves to the body camera on his chest. He presses something. A light that was blinking green blinks red, then goes dark. "What did you just do?" Adrian's voice sharpens for the first time. "Equipment malfunction." Hale does not smile, but his face carries the shape a smile would take if one were permitted. "Happens all the time." "I'm recording on my phone," Reed says quietly. He has already raised it. Screen facing Hale. Red dot visible. Hale's expression changes. Not fear, recalculation. He is not used to being observed by someone who understands the value of observation. "Put the phone away." "I'm on a public sidewalk exercising my First Amendment right to record police activity. North Carolina law does not prohibit recording officers in public spaces." I said, "Put it away." "I decline." Reed's voice is gentle, pastoral, and absolutely immovable. Hale turns back to Adrian. Stand up. Adrian stands slowly, hands visible. The camera around his neck swings lightly against his chest. Give me the camera. No. That's evidence. Evidence of what crime? Hale reaches for the camera strap. Not slowly. Not with the procedural caution of an officer conducting a lawful search. He reaches the way a man reaches when patience has been replaced by something older and less professional. The instinct to take what he wants from someone he believes has no power to stop him. His fist closes around the camera strap and yanks. The nylon bites into the back of Adrian's neck, pressing against vertebrae, cutting a hot line across skin. Adrian's hand comes up. Not to strike, not to grab, just to relieve the pressure sawing against his throat. For 1 second, both men hold the camera. The strap tightens. Adrian's breath catches. Let go. Hale's voice drops into the register that precedes violence. Low, compressed. A sound made in the chest rather than the mouth. Adrian lets go. The alternative, any alternative, ends with him on the ground and an officer safety notation in a report. He knows the arithmetic. He has always known the arithmetic. His rights are worth exactly as much as the officer holding his camera decides they are worth. And right now, that value is 0. Hale rips the camera over Adrian's head with enough force to snap the strap clasp. The camera body swings on the broken nylon and cracks against Adrian's jaw. A sharp contact that snaps his head sideways. Not hard enough to draw blood. Hard enough that the bruise will darken for before long it fades. Hard enough that Reed, standing 15 feet away with his phone raised, draws a sharp breath. Adrian does not touch his face. Does not raise his hand to the point of impact. Does not give Hale the satisfaction of a flinch. He stands perfectly still, jaw throbbing, breathing in counts of 4 while Hale holds the camera like a trophy and waits for a reaction that never comes. Now, Hale sets the camera on the hood of his patrol car, the notebook. I'm not surrendering my personal property without a warrant. Hale steps forward, close enough that Adrian can smell coffee and gun oil and the sweet and sour tang of authority exercised without restraint. I said, give me the notebook. And I said no. What happens next takes 4 seconds. Hale grabs Adrian's arm, the right arm at the elbow, and twists it behind his back in a single motion that carries the mechanical efficiency of repetition. Adrian does not resist. His body goes fluid, absorbing the torque the way a man absorbs it when he has been trained to fall, to let the force pass through without fighting it. Because fighting it gives them justification. Gives them a report that reads combative subject. Gives them the legal cover they need to do worse. He goes down, face first onto the sidewalk. The impact splits the skin above his left eyebrow. Blood, warm and immediate, runs into his eye. His jacket tears at the shoulder seam where it catches on the concrete. His palms scrape against the grit, and the pain is specific, granular. The kind of pain that stores itself in detail. Hale's knee finds the space between Adrian's shoulder blades. 240 pounds compressing the breath out of a man whose hands are already behind his back, already surrendering, already empty. The officer grabs the collar of Adrian's jacket and pulls upward while pressing downward with the knee. A technique that accomplishes nothing tactical and exists only to communicate dominance. The fabric bites into Adrian's throat. For 3 seconds, breathing requires effort. Stop moving! Adrian is not moving, has not moved since the concrete received him. But the command is not about compliance. It is about establishing a narrative. A man told to stop moving is, by implication, a man who was moving. And a report that says subject was commanded to stop resisting reads very differently from a report that says subject was compliant throughout. The notebook skids 3 feet across the sidewalk, pages open, block letters visible to anyone close enough to read them. But no one is close enough. No one looks. A drop of Adrian's blood lands on the stone where the historical marker stands, a stain that will dry and disappear by soon, leaving no evidence that it was ever there. From across the street, a woman stands on her porch. She is not Marla Whitcomb. She is Beatrice Shaw, 72 years old, retired English teacher, the only black homeowner on Magnolia Lane. A woman who bought her house in that year when the neighborhood was something else entirely and stayed as it became this. She holds up her phone, recording. Her hands shake, but the phone is steady. Her Ring doorbell camera is recording too. Has been recording since Hale's patrol car appeared on the street. Timestamp, angle, audio, everything. Officer, I'm witnessing this. Reed's voice cuts through the cool air, firm, louder than before. I'm recording. This man has committed no crime. Step back. This is police business. This is a public sidewalk. I'm not interfering. I'm observing. There's a difference the Constitution recognizes. Hale takes a step toward Reed. A single step. Enough to close distance. Enough to establish that the boundary between the Reverend and the officer's authority is thinner than Reed might think. You want to be next? The question is quiet, almost conversational, but the threat beneath it is as visible as the hand Hale drops toward his belt. Reed does not move, does not lower the phone, does not change the angle of the camera. Many years of ministry in neighborhoods where authority shows up uninvited have taught him something that training alone cannot teach. That sometimes standing still is the most radical act a man can perform. I'm a minister, Reed says. I'm recording a public interaction on a public street, and I will be filing a report with the City Council, the NAACP, and every media outlet that answers my call. So I suggest you make your next decision carefully, Officer Hale, because that camera is watching and it does not blink. Haley holds the Reverend's gaze for 3 seconds. Then he turns back to Adrian and the exchange is over, but not forgotten, not by anyone present, not by the Ring camera on Beatrice Shaw's porch, not by the phone in Reed's steady hand. Hale presses the cuff around Adrian's right wrist, then the left. The metal clicks, tight enough to compress the tendons, tight enough that Adrian's fingers will tingle for hours after they are removed. Barrett Hale, badge 4981, Adrian says from the concrete. His voice is muffled but clear. For the record, I am compliant. I am not resisting. I am stating for any recording device present that I have committed no crime and that this arrest is occurring without probable cause. The words are precise, technical, delivered from the ground with a knee on his back and blood pooling above his eyebrow and his camera on the hood of a patrol car and his notebook lying open on a sidewalk that was once the front yard of a family named Harris, who lived here before the bulldozers came. Hale radios dispatch. Unit 14, I've got one in custody, 1200 block Magnolia Lane, resisting a public officer and second-degree trespass. Requesting transport, resisting. Adrian, who went limp, who announced his compliance, who submitted to handcuffs without raising his voice. Trespass. On a public sidewalk, next to a public historical marker, in broad daylight. The charges are fiction. But fiction becomes fact when it's typed into a form and stamped with a badge number. And the distance between what happened and what the report says happened is exactly the width of a police officer's discretion, which in America, for certain citizens, is the widest space in the world. The precinct booking process takes a period of time. Adrian is walked through the sally port with his hands still cuffed behind his back. The metal has been on his wrist for a while. His fingers have gone numb. The cut above his eyebrow has stopped bleeding, but the blood has dried in a line down the left side of his face, and no one offers to clean it. At the booking desk, Hale removes the cuffs with more force than necessary, yanking the left one open at an angle that torques Adrian's wrist. A small act, petty, The kind of thing that does not appear in any report, but lives in the body for days. Spread your arms, face the wall. Adrian faces the wall, arms out. A pat down. His second in a period of time. Hale's hands are thorough and rough. When they reach Adrian's jacket pockets, Hale pulls out the second leather notebook, the replacement, and flips it open. Another one. He holds it up for the booking officer to see. This guy keeps journals like a spy. Adrian says nothing. He has learned, has always known, that silence during processing is the only currency that retains its value. Every word spoken during booking can be transcribed, paraphrased, misquoted, or omitted depending on who is writing and what narrative they need. He is photographed, fingerprinted. His fingers are pressed against the ink pad with the careless pressure of routine, pressed hard enough that the pad's edge cuts into the soft skin beneath his ring finger. Another small act, another thing that will not appear in any report. His new camera is taken, and this time, he watches the booking officer open the camera body, remove the memory card, and place it in a small envelope that disappears into a desk drawer rather than the evidence bag with the camera. I'd like to note that the memory card was removed separately from the camera, Adrian says, and I'd like that noted on the property receipt. The booking officer, a civilian employee named Terrence, who has processed 800 bookings this year and does not get paid enough to engage with procedural challenges, writes nothing on the receipt. I am formally requesting that the separate handling of my camera's memory card be documented. Adrian's voice carries the tone of a man who understands that requests made in the passive voice are easier to ignore than requests made with specificity. The card contains approximately 340 photographs, all of public property, all taken from public sidewalks. Right. I want the record to show that the card was separated from the camera during the booking process. Terrence writes, "Subject requests re-memory card noted." Then he slides the receipt across the counter and moves to the next task. Adrian is placed in a holding cell then. The cell is 7 feet by 10 feet. Concrete bench, steel toilet, a fluorescent light that buzzes at a frequency designed to prevent sleep. He sits on the bench, back straight, hands on knees. He does not pace, does not call out, or do any of the things that holding cells are designed to provoke. He breathes. 4 in, 4 held, 4 out, 4 held. Then a man Adrian has not seen before appears at the cell window. Older, silver at the temples, captain's bars on his collar. He unlocks the door, steps inside, leaves the door open behind him. A gesture that is technically generous and practically meaningless, since the corridor beyond leads nowhere without a badge. Garrett Vale. I'm the precinct commander. He does not extend a hand. My officers tell me you've been causing problems in Briarcliff. Your officers detained me without probable cause, seized my property, and one of them deactivated his body camera before making physical contact. If that's what you mean by causing problems, then I suppose I have. Vale leans against the doorframe. His posture is casual, the deliberate informality of a man who has conducted hundreds of these conversations and learned that relaxation communicates power more effectively than aggression. Here's what I see, Mr. Whitlock. I see a man with no local history, no employment record, no ties to this community, who keeps showing up in the same neighborhood with cameras and notebooks and refuses to explain why. My officers did their jobs. Your officers committed at least 3 procedural violations that will be documented in my formal complaint. And Captain, I notice you're visiting my cell alone without counsel present the Nana that day. Is this an official interview? Vale's jaw shifts. The same micro-expression Hale showed at the sidewalk. Irritation disguised as patience. This is a courtesy visit. Then I'll extend a courtesy in return. Everything I've said in this cell is being stored in a memory that has never failed me in many years. When this conversation becomes relevant, and it will, I'll recall it accurately. Vale stares at him. The silence lasts 5 seconds, which in a holding cell feels like a paragraph. Then the captain straightens, adjusts his collar, and walks out without closing the door, letting it drift shut on its own springs, slowly enough that Adrian can hear his footsteps retreating down the corridor. Heavy steps, unhurried. The walk of a man who still believes he is in control. In the corridor outside, Sergeant Knox passes the cell moments later, glances through the window, and pauses. He expected to what? Agitation, anxiety, the behavioral markers of a man who has something to hide. What he sees instead is stillness so complete it looks like training, like someone who has sat in uncomfortable rooms before and emerged from them with more information than he entered with. Knox moves on, but the observation unsettles him. There is something about this man, about the way he speaks, the way he holds himself, the way his composure seems not performed but structural, that does not match the profile Knox has assigned him. The thought occurs to Knox, briefly and for the first time, that he might have made a mistake. He dismisses it. Mistakes are for people who can afford them. And in Knox's experience, the safest career strategy is never admitting you were wrong about anyone. Then, Adrian is allowed to make a phone call. He dials from memory. The conversation lasts a period of time. It happened again, he says. That day, same location, different officer, same officer, actually. Hale, resisting, and trespass, both fabricated. I have a witness, a pastor named Amos Reed. He was recording, and there's a ring camera across the street. A pause. He listens. I understand the timing, I know what's at stake, but I need the footage preserved before it disappears. FOIA for Hale's body camera. He turned it off during the encounter, which is its own violation, and the precinct booking footage. My camera's memory card was separated during processing. I want that documented. Another pause. No, I'll wait. I'll go through the process, but I need you to know these officers are not improvising. The supplemental report, the property handling, the body camera deactivation, this is coordinated. Someone is managing the narrative. He hangs up, returns to his cell, sits, breathes. Then, the following morning, that day, Adrian is released. Charges pending review by the district attorney's office. His camera is returned, his notebook is returned, the camera's memory card is not. He reads the property receipt at the desk, line by line, item by item. The memory card isn't listed on the return inventory, he says. Everything that came in went back out. The booking officer, a different one, morning shift, says without checking. Check. The officer checks, types, scrolls, types again. System shows the card was logged at intake, no checkout record, might still be in evidence processing. I was released without charges. There is no active investigation. On what basis is my property being held? You'll need to take that up with the investigating officer. There is no investigating officer. There is no investigation. I was detained, held overnight, and released without charges. I want my property. The officer shrugs. Not out of malice, out of the particular brand of indifference that bureaucracy cultivates in people who process human beings through systems designed to process paperwork. Adrian takes the receipt, folds it, places it in his jacket pocket beside the receipt from that day. 2 receipts, 2 detentions, 0 crimes, 0 charges, and a missing memory card containing 340 photographs that nobody in this building will ever be able to explain. What Adrian does next would, under normal circumstances, take days. He does it in hours. By noon on that day, he has filed 3 documents. The first is a formal complaint with the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Police Department's Internal Affairs Division, transmitted through the civil rights attorney he contacted on that day. The complaint names 4 officers, Hale, Knox, Monroe, and Callan, though Adrian does not yet know about Callan's supplemental report. The attorney included her name based on a preliminary records check that showed her filing activity on case 2025-MK-4471. The second is a FOIA request to the CMPD for all body camera footage from both encounters, that day and that day, including Monroe's camera from the first stop and Hale's camera from the second. The request specifically notes that Hale's camera was deactivated during the that day encounter, which constitutes a violation of the department's body camera policy adopted under the that year consent decree. The third document is a FOIA request filed through Reverend Reed's Church Coalition, New Hope AME Community Justice Ministry for all suspicious person calls in the Briarcliff Estates Patrol Zone over the past a period of time, including caller demographics, subject demographics, arrest outcomes, and conviction rates. Adrian files these documents with the precision of someone who has done this before. Not as a victim, this part is new, raw, personal, but as someone who understands the architecture of institutional accountability, where the pressure points are, which doors open with a complaint, and which doors require a subpoena, how to build a record that is harder to dismiss than it is to address. He files them and waits. The wait is its own kind of violence. The slow-motion cruelty of systems that process grievances at the speed of bureaucracy, while processing arrests at the speed of fear. Later, three things arrive. The first is the body camera footage from that day, Monroe's camera, the one that was active during the entire first encounter. Adrian's attorney receives it via secure digital transfer then. The footage is for a long while. Most of it is routine, but at the 11-minute mark, audio captures a conversation between Hale and Knox that was not intended for the camera, but was captured by it regardless. Profile fits, Hale's voice says. Expensive camera, no reason to be here, you know the drill. Knox's voice arriving on scene. What do we have? Another one, walking around, taking pictures. Won't say why. ID? Clean, new to the area. Hold him. Let's see what shakes loose. Let's see what shakes loose. Detention without probable cause, articulated on camera, time-stamped, authenticated by the department's own recording equipment. The second thing that arrives is Callan's supplemental report. Adrian reads it for the first time, sitting at the attorney's desk, his hands flattening the printed page with the controlled pressure of a man preventing himself from crumpling it. Furtive hand movements toward his waistband area, he reads aloud. I was holding a notebook at chest height, both hands visible. At no point did either hand drop below my waist. His attorney, Marissa Cross, 43, a woman whose office walls are lined with framed orders from cases she has won against municipal defendants, highlights the critical line. She wasn't there. Officer Callan was on patrol in Zone 6 during your detention, 6 miles away. She filed this report later the fact, describing physical actions she could not have witnessed. Filing a false police report, Adrian says quietly, North Carolina General Statute 14-225, and potentially a violation of 18 U.S.C. 242, deprivation of rights under color of law. If this report was used to justify further detention or monitoring, it constitutes an act of official misconduct that deprived you of your constitutional rights. Adrian stares at the report. His jaw is set. The bruise from Hale's camera strap has faded to a yellowish shadow along his jawline. The cut above his eyebrow has closed, but the skin is still tender. There's something else, Marissa says. The report was emailed. Standard departmental distribution list plus one additional recipient. We'll need to FOIA the email to identify who. Do it. The third thing that arrives is a phone call. Reverend Reed breathing hard, voice carrying the weight of something he has just discovered. Adrian, the FOIA came back on the Briarcliff calls. A long stretch of data. What does it say? 23 suspicious person calls from that patrol zone over the previous stretch. 21 subjects identified as black, 2 white, 9 arrests, all 9 black subjects. Convictions resulting from those 9 arrests? A pause. The kind of pause that has weight. 0. Not a single one. 21 calls, 9 arrests. 0 convictions. Every single arrest was dropped, dismissed, or declined for prosecution. They've been running a harassment operation and nobody was counting. Adrian closes his eyes. The numbers are not surprising. The numbers are never surprising. What is surprising, what is always surprising, no matter how many times he encounters it, is the completeness of the pattern, the thoroughness of it. Not random acts of individual prejudice, but a system operating exactly as designed, producing exactly the outcomes it was built to produce, and leaving exactly the kind of data trail that no one bothers to examine until someone with the right tools and the right standing and the right stubbornness sits down and starts counting. 23 calls, Adrian says. Can you tell who made them? The FOIA response redacted caller identities, but 14 of the 23 came from the same phone number. 14 calls, one number, one person watching the neighborhood like a sentry, dialing the same 3 digits every time a black face appeared on a street she considered hers. Adrian does not need to ask whose number it is. He already knows. The day before, everything changes. Adrian meets Marissa Cross at her office then. She has assembled a file: body cam footage, Callan's supplemental report, the FOIA response, Reed's phone recording from that day, and one additional item she obtained that morning through a contact at the Mecklenburg County Clerk's office, Beatrice Shaw's Ring doorbell footage from that day. The Ring footage is time-stamped. It shows Adrian standing beside the historical marker with both hands holding his notebook at chest height. His posture is relaxed. His movements are unhurried. At no point do his hands drop below his waist. At no point does he make any gesture toward his waistband. At no point does he exhibit anything that could be described as furtive hand movements or pre-flight indicators or counter-surveillance behavior. Officer Callan's supplemental report, filed later from 6 miles away by an officer who was not present, describes all of these things as having occurred. This is what it looks like when the system manufactures evidence, Marissa says. A false report filed by an absent officer using standardized language designed to justify detention and monitoring. I've seen this template before. Furtive movements, counter-surveillance behavior, consistent with its boilerplate. They fill in the name and the date, and the rest writes itself. Adrian is quiet for a long time. He stares at the freeze frame from Shaw's Ring camera, himself standing in the sun holding a notebook, committing the crime of documenting history while black. There's one more thing, Marissa says. She places a sheet of paper on the desk. Shaw's Ring camera also captured audio, 47 seconds of conversation between Hale and an unidentified male voice on his phone, recorded while Hale was sitting in his patrol car before making contact with you on that day. She presses play on her laptop. Hale's voice tinny through the Ring camera's microphone. Yeah, same guy, he's back. Sitting on the wall again. An unidentified voice. Same one from the Slack? Same one. Camera and everything. Whitcomb called it in already. And I'm about to have a conversation with him. Everett says hold him if you can. Let's see what shakes loose. The recording ends. Everett, Adrian says, as in Sergeant Knox? That's our interpretation. The voice is unidentified. We'd need formal voice analysis to confirm, but the name, combined with Knox's arrival moments later and his use of the same phrase, let's see what shakes loose, establishes a pattern of coordination. They planned this. Before they arrived, before they saw you, before they had any information about who you were or what you were doing. They coordinated a detention based on a Slack post and a phone call from a woman whose primary qualification for identifying criminal behavior is owning a house near the person she's accusing. Adrian leans back in his chair. The cut above his eyebrow catches the office light. His hands rest on the arms of the chair with the stillness of a man who has trained himself to be still when the world demands reaction. Soon, he says. What about soon? Soon changes the equation. After soon, this isn't a complaint from an anonymous citizen. After soon, this is something else entirely. Marissa studies his face. She has been his attorney for a while. She knows his name. She knows his case. But there is something about the way he says soon, something about the weight the word carries in his mouth, that tells her she does not yet know the most important thing about Adrian Whitlock. What happens soon, Adrian? He looks at her. The pause is deliberate, not dramatic, considered. A man deciding how much to reveal and when and to whom. Soon, he says, I put on a different suit. That evening, a woman named Vivian Hartwell parks her car outside the Morrison Suites and walks to room 214. Adrian opens the door before she knocks. He saw her through the window. She is 56, white, tailored coat, professional bearing, reading glasses pushed up into silver-streaked hair. She carries a leather portfolio embossed with a seal Adrian knows well. Mr. Whitlock. Her voice is careful. The formality is deliberate, the kind of address reserved for people whose titles carry weight, even before the titles are publicly announced. I didn't expect to see you looking like this. The bruise, the cut, the torn jacket hanging in the closet, unworn since that day. I've been getting acquainted with the community, Adrian says. More acquainted than I planned. Hartwell steps inside, looks around the room. The aligned shoes, the color-sorted shirts, the 2 leather notebooks on the nightstand. Her expression tightens in a way that suggests she is calculating not just what happened, but what it means for what happens next. We should talk, she says, before the 17th, before the ceremony, because what you're describing, if it becomes public, it's going to become public. Adrian. She sets her portfolio on the desk, opens it. Inside, a printed itinerary, a guest list, a seating chart, and at the top a seal that reads United States Court of Appeals for the 4th Circuit. The chief judge is flying in for your investiture. 2 senators confirmed. The Bar Association president. Media from every outlet in the region. This is supposed to be a celebration, and it will be. But it will also be an answer. An answer to what? To the question no one on that sidewalk asked me. Adrian picks up his notebook from the nightstand, holds it the way he held it on the wall in Briarcliff, both hands chest height, visible and unthreatening. They never asked who I was. They looked at me and decided they already knew. Hartwell is quiet for a long time. She has spent her career in the federal judiciary, first as a clerk, then as an attorney, now as a senior administrator for the 4th Circuit. She has seen judges confirmed and judges impeached, and judges face crises that test the boundary between personal experience and professional obligation. You know what this means, she says finally, for the consent decree. I know. The CMPD consent decree, the one you were appointed to oversee. If these officers' conduct becomes part of the public record, it will become part of the public record. Then you'll have to recuse. 28 U.S.C. 455. A judge must disqualify himself in any proceeding in which his impartiality might reasonably be questioned. If you're a victim of the same department you're supposed to be monitoring, I know the statute, Vivian, then you know what you're giving up. The room is quiet except for the hum of the hotel's ventilation system. Adrian stands at the window looking out at the parking lot where his rental car sits under a light that flickers every 11 seconds. He has counted. I'm not giving anything up, he says. They took it. They took it when they put me on the ground, and they took my camera, and they filed a false report, and they stole my memory card, and they held me overnight for the crime of walking through a neighborhood that used to belong to people who looked like me. He turns from the window. I didn't ask for this, Vivian. I came here to do a job. I walked those streets to understand the city I was about to serve. And the city's officers showed me exactly what they think of people who look like me before I had a robe, before I had a title, before I had any of the protections that come with power. He pauses. The cut above his eyebrow catches the light. So yes, I'll recuse. I'll follow the statute. I'll give up the consent decree. But I will not give up the truth of what happened on that sidewalk. Because if a federal judge can be thrown to the ground for taking photographs in a public park, what happens to the people who don't have a robe waiting for them? Hartwell collects her portfolio, stands. At the door, she turns. For what it's worth, and I know it's not worth enough, I'm sorry this happened to you. Don't be sorry. Be a witness. She nods once, leaves. Adrian stands at the window for a long time after she is gone, watching the parking lot light flicker on, off, counting the seconds between each cycle, because counting is what he does. Counting is what he has always done. Count the steps, count the seconds, count the badge numbers and the timestamps and the lies. Count everything, because when the moment comes, the numbers are all that stand between truth and the version of the story the system would prefer to tell. This is only the halfway point, and what happens on that day will shake this story to its foundation. Don't go anywhere. Or better yet, share this with someone who needs to hear it. Part 2 is where the real reckoning begins. Soon is that day. Soon, the Chief Judge of the Fourth Circuit will administer an oath in a courtroom filled with 200 guests. Soon, Adrian Whitlock will raise his right hand and swear to administer justice without respect to persons and to do equal right to the poor and to the rich. Soon his face will appear on every screen in every precinct break room, every patrol car dashboard, every phone in the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Police Department. And in the North Division Station, Officer Barrett Hale, the man who pressed a federal judge face first into a sidewalk, who snapped his camera strap, who filed charges he knew were false, will look up at a television screen and see the man he arrested staring back at him. But that is soon. That night, Adrian opens his notebook to the last entry. Below the date and the details of his meeting with Hartwell, he writes one final line in his block letters. Not a legal notation, not an observation about infrastructure, something simpler, something that has been building for a while on sidewalks and in holding cells and in the space between who he is and who they decided he was. They never asked. He closes the notebook, aligns it with the edge of the nightstand, turns off the light, and in the darkness of room 214, with his shoes aligned and his shirt sorted and his breathing steady at 4 counts in and 4 counts out, Adrian Whitlock sleeps for the last time as a man no one in Charlotte knows. By this time soon, everyone will. And for the officers who never asked, who reached for handcuffs instead of questions, who saw skin color and stopped looking, who filed reports about a man they never bothered to understand, the answer to the question they never asked will be the most expensive silence of their careers. The notebook sits on the nightstand. The name on the first page, the name no one read, waits in the dark, and somewhere across the city, in a precinct break room that smells like burnt coffee and institutional carpet, Barrett Hale eats a sandwich and watches a basketball game and has no idea, none, that the man he left bleeding on a sidewalk not long before is about to become the most powerful person in his professional life. The clock on the wall keeps moving. In the North Division break room, Hale's incident report sits in a folder on Knox's desk, waiting for that day processing. Callan's supplemental is attached, the one describing furtive movements that never happened, written by an officer who was never there. Captain Vale's name appears on the routing slip, a rubber stamp of approval applied without reading. 3 officers, 1 captain, 1 false report, 1 missing memory card, 1 deactivated body camera, and a formal complaint that Vale has already decided to close as unfounded before the intake review is complete. They have done this 23 times. 21 of the 23 targets were black, 9 were arrested, 0 were convicted. And not once did anyone in the chain of command ask whether the pattern meant anything. But patterns are Adrian Whitlock's specialty. He has spent many years reading them, interpreting them, and applying the law to the people who create them. In a period of time, the courthouse will open. In a period of time, a man will put on a robe. And in a period of time, the first officer to check the news on his phone will feel the floor drop out from under everything he thought he knew. And the only question left will be the one that has been hanging in the air since the first handcuff clicked shut on a sun-warmed sidewalk. Warmed Who did you arrest? The answer is coming, and it is going to change everything. Part 2. That day breaks clear over Charlotte. The kind of morning that feels scrubbed, sky-washed blue by the day before's rain, light coming in low and clean through the hotel window, then cutting a line across the carpet that reaches the edge of Adrian Whitlock's bed at exactly the moment his eyes open. He does not use an alarm, has not used one in many years. His body wakes when the work requires it, and today, the work requires everything. He showers, shaves with a precision that leaves no shadow, dresses in a suit that has been hanging in the closet since he arrived. Dark charcoal, single-breasted. The kind of fabric that holds its line without announcing its cost. White shirt, navy tie, shoes polished the night before, the leather carrying a depth of shine that suggests ritual rather than vanity. He stands in front of the bathroom mirror and does something he has not done all week. He touches the cut above his left eyebrow, the one Hale's Sidewalk opened not long before. The wound has closed. The skin is pink and healing, but it is visible, a thin line that makeup could cover, but honesty demands he leave exposed. His sister Simone arrives then. She is 42, a pediatric surgeon in Durham, and she has driven a period of time in the dark to be here for this. She takes one look at his face, and her expression cycles through 3 emotions in 2 seconds: pride, fury, and the particular exhaustion of a black woman who has watched her brother navigate systems designed to grind him down since the day he passed the bar. What happened to your forehead? I'll tell you later. Adrian, after the ceremony. I promise. She studies him, decides to trust the promise, opens her bag and pulls out a small concealer compact. At least let me know. His voice is gentle but final. I want them to see it. Simone closes the compact, nods once. She understands. Maybe not the specifics, but the principle. Some wounds are evidence, some scars are testimony, and sometimes the most powerful thing a man can do is walk into a room full of people who hold power and let them see what power did to him when no one was watching. They drive to the Charles R. Jonas Federal Building in downtown Charlotte. The building is limestone and glass, 11 stories of federal authority anchored to the corner of West Trade Street like a declaration. Security at the entrance, U.S. Marshals, metal detectors. The quiet efficiency of a system that takes the protection of federal judges seriously, even when the city's own police force does not. Adrian enters through the judge's entrance on the east side, a corridor he has never walked before but will walk every working day for the rest of his career. His chambers, assigned but not yet occupied, wait on the 6th floor. The nameplate has already been mounted. Honorable Adrian T. Whitlock, United States District Judge, Western District of North Carolina. He does not stop to read it. Not yet. The investiture ceremony is scheduled for later in the ceremonial courtroom on the 9th floor, a room designed for exactly this kind of occasion with ceilings high enough to suggest the weight of the office and seating for 200 guests arranged in rows of dark wood pews that feel more like a cathedral than a courthouse. By then the room is full. 2 United States senators, one from each party, a bipartisan gesture that masks the 3-year political battle that preceded Adrian's confirmation. The Chief Judge of the 4th Circuit Court of Appeals, who will administer the oath. The President of the North Carolina State Bar, federal judges from 3 districts, attorneys, clerks, law professors, community leaders. Simone in the front row, sitting beside Adrian's law school mentor, a 78-year-old retired judge named Alden Rhodes who taught Adrian constitutional law and told him many years ago that the bench would find him when he was ready. Media from every outlet in the region occupy the back rows. 2 television cameras, a reporter from the Charlotte Observer, a correspondent from a national wire service who flew in from D.C. Because the confirmation of a black federal judge in the Western District is, in the current political landscape, news. And in the 3rd row, unannounced, Vivian Hartwell sits with her leather portfolio on her lap and her eyes on the door through which Adrian will enter. Her expression carries the tension of a woman who knows something the room does not. That the man about to take an oath of impartiality was, not long before, face down on a sidewalk with an officer's knee between his shoulder blades, and that the oath he is about to swear will, by the very nature of what was done to him, limit his ability to use the power it confers. Then Adrian enters the courtroom. He walks slowly, not because ceremony demands it, but because his left knee, the one that absorbed the impact when Hale took him down, still aches when he bears weight on the first step. He masks it, barely. Simone notices. Hartwell notices. No one else does. He reaches the bench, turns to face the room. 200 people looking at a man in a dark suit with a thin cut above his left eyebrow, and the quiet, gathered intensity of someone who has earned every step of the walk that brought him here. The chief judge rises, silver-haired, 71, a woman whose career on the federal bench spans 4 decades, and whose voice carries the authority of someone who has administered this oath enough times to know that the words are older than the building, older than the country's best intentions, older than the distance between what the law promises and what the law delivers. Raise your right hand. Adrian raises his right hand. The wrist that Hale cuffed too tight, the wrist where the metal left marks that have faded but not disappeared. He holds it steady. I, Adrian Travers Whitlock, do solemnly swear that I will administer justice without respect to persons and do equal right to the poor and to the rich, and that I will faithfully and impartially discharge and perform all the duties incumbent upon me as United States District Judge for the Western District of North Carolina under the Constitution and laws of the United States. So help me God. His voice does not waver. The words, prescribed by 28 U.S.C. Section 453, unchanged since 1789, fill the courtroom with the kind of weight that settles into wood and stone and the bones of everyone present. The chief judge smiles. The room applauds. Simone is crying and trying not to. Alden Rhodes in the front row closes his eyes and nods once, the way a man nods when something he predicted a long time ago finally arrives. Adrian Whitlock is now a federal judge, and in a period of time when the first photograph hits the wire service feed and the local affiliates cut to the ceremony for their midday broadcasts, the city of Charlotte will learn his name, including the officers who never asked it. The midday news runs then on WCNC Charlotte. The anchor reads the teleprompter with the practiced warmth of local broadcast. Charlotte welcomed its newest federal judge this morning in a ceremony at the Jonas Federal Building. Judge Adrian Whitlock was sworn in as a U.S. District Judge for the Western District of North Carolina. Judge Whitlock, who previously served on the bench in the District of Columbia, will oversee cases including the ongoing federal consent decree governing the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Police Department. The camera cuts to ceremony footage. Adrian's face fills the screen. Left hand on a Bible, right hand raised, the cut above his eyebrow visible in high definition to anyone paying attention. The anchor continues. Judge Whitlock's appointment is historic. He is the first black judge to serve in the Western District in over many years. He has been described by colleagues as meticulous, principled, and deeply committed to equal application of the law. Meticulous, principled. The words float through television speakers across the city, into living rooms and diners and precinct break rooms, describing a man who not long before was lying on a sidewalk under a knee that did not care about his principles or his meticulousness, only about the color of his skin and the neighborhood he walked through. In the North Division Precinct break room, the television is tuned to BNC. It is almost always tuned to WCNC during lunch shifts. The volume is low. 3 officers sit at the table eating. 2 are discussing a Panthers game. The third, Officer Mira Monroe, glances up at the screen during a lull in conversation. She sets her fork down, slowly, the way someone sets something down when the world tilts and the body needs both hands free to steady itself. She stares at the screen, the face, the cut above the eyebrow, the suit, the tie, the courtroom, the robes being presented by a smiling clerk, the name on the chyron, Judge Adrian T. Whitlock, U.S. District Court, and the last three words of the anchor's sentence, the words that close around her chest like a fist. Oversight of the CMPD consent decree. The consent decree. Their consent decree. The federal court order that governs how their department uses force, conducts stops, handles body cameras, and processes complaints. The order that requires quarterly compliance reports and threatens sanctions for violations. The order that every officer in the building knows by reputation, even if most have never read it. The judge overseeing that order is the man she watched Hale detain on a sidewalk, the man whose notebook was seized, the man whose camera was taken and whose memory card disappeared, the man who sat in their holding cell breathing in counts of 4, while Captain Vale visited alone then on that day, and Sergeant Knox walked past the window, and Nora Callan filed a report describing things that never happened. Monroe stands, leaves the break room, walks down the corridor toward the sergeant's office where Everett Knox sits reviewing patrol schedules. She stops in the doorway. "Sergeant, have you seen the news?" Knox does not look up. "What news?" "The new federal judge. The one assigned to our consent decree." Knox's pen stops moving. He still does not look up, but his hand has frozen, which is its own kind of answer. "His name is Adrian Whitlock," Monroe says. Her voice is tight, controlled, but beneath the control something is cracking. The sound of someone realizing they are standing inside a building that is about to collapse. He was in this precinct not long before, in a holding cell. Hale arrested him in Briarcliff. Now Knox looks up. The color leaves his face the way light leaves a room when someone pulls a curtain. Not gradually, not in stages, but all at once. Everything bright replaced by something flat and gray and very, very still. "Close the door," he says. Monroe closes it. "Who else knows?" "Everyone who watches the news, Sergeant." His face has been on screen for a while. Knox stands. His chair rolls backward and hits the filing cabinet. He paces 3 steps to the window, turns, paces back. The contained energy of a man whose body is trying to process what his mind has already calculated, that the careful architecture of plausible deniability he has spent many years constructing is crumbling in real time. Hale. The name comes out like a stone dropped into still water. Where is Hale? Off duty that day. Callan? Day shift. She's on patrol in Zone 3. Get her in. Don't tell her why, just get her in. Monroe does not move. "Sergeant, I'm not going to... I'm giving you an order, officer." Monroe stands very still. Her body camera is not running. Off-duty, different rules, but her memory is. A period of time on the force have taught her many things, and one of them is this. When a supervisor orders you to summon a colleague without explaining why, and the supervisor's face is the color of old paper, the order is not about procedure, it is about containment. With respect, Sergeant, I'm going to pretend I didn't hear that. And you might want to consider doing the same with whatever you're thinking about doing next. She turns, walks out, leaves the door open behind her. Knox stands alone in his office looking at the open door the way a man looks at an exit he is not sure leads anywhere safe. His phone rings. Captain Vale's extension, he picks it up. "I know," he says before Vale speaks. "I saw the news. My office." A period of time. Knox walks down the corridor to Vale's office. The hallway is 37 feet long. He has walked it thousands of times. Today it feels like a mile. Vale is standing behind his desk, not sitting. Standing. The posture of a man who has received news that makes sitting feel like surrender. His cell phone is on the desk, face up, the missed call notification still glowing. "The chief knows," Vale says. His office received a call from the 4th Circuit Administrator earlier informing the department that the incoming consent decree judge filed a formal complaint with Internal Affairs not long before regarding his treatment by officers of this command. Knox's mouth opens, closes. The complaint I closed? Vale's voice is flat. The one I marked as unfounded? The day before? You closed it? Knox's composure breaks for the first time since the sidewalk. You closed a complaint filed by a federal judge? I didn't know he was a federal judge. He was listed as a transient male with no employment record. I processed it the same way I process every complaint that comes in with no corroborating witnesses. He has corroborating witnesses. A pastor with video, a Ring doorbell with footage, and Monroe body camera from the first stop. Silence. The kind that accumulates weight the longer it lasts. The chief wants the complaint reopened immediately. He wants it forwarded to Internal Affairs with a priority flag, and he wants Hale suspended from patrol pending investigation. Suspended based on what? An unsubstantiated. Based on the fact that we put a federal judge on the ground with a knee in his back and stole his camera's memory card. Based on the fact that Callan filed a supplemental report describing an encounter she wasn't present for. Based on the fact that you closed the complaint without investigation, and based on the fact that the chief would like to have a career. Soon. Vale pauses. His hand grips the back of his desk chair. The leather creaks under the pressure. Do you understand what's happening here, Everett? This is not a citizen complaint anymore. This is a federal judge. The judge assigned to our consent decree. The judge who decides whether we pass our quarterly reviews or get sanctioned. The judge who signs off on whether our officers keep their jobs, and we put him in a cell. The words land with the precision of someone who has spent many years learning how institutional consequences actually work. Not the theoretical consequences taught at the academy, but the real ones. The ones that end pensions and generate headlines, and bring federal monitors into buildings where they read every email and review every stop and count every complaint. And there's something else, Vale says, lowering his voice. The chief asked me directly, Everett, whether there was any coordination between you and Hale before the first stop, whether the detention was pre-planned. Knox's face does not change, but his eyes do. A fractional tightening that, to anyone trained to read deception, says everything. There was no coordination. Hale responded to a 911 call. I arrived as backup. That's what I told the chief. That's what your report says. If there's anything that contradicts that account, any phone calls, any text messages, any Slack posts, any communication of any kind, it needs to not exist. Do you understand me? I understand. Good. The two men look at each other across a desk that holds many years of shared command, shared assumptions, shared complicity in a system that functioned perfectly until it selected the wrong target. This is the moment everything flips, and you need to see what happens next. If you're not subscribed, now is the time, because the fallout is about to hit every level of this department. Vale sinks into Knox's desk chair. The springs creak under his weight. He stares at the wall where Knox's patrol schedule hangs, a grid of names and shifts and zone assignments, the machinery of a department that has been operating on assumptions that are, as of that day, catastrophically wrong. What about the body camera? What about it? Hale's camera from that day. He said it malfunctioned. Did it? The question is a door. Knox looks at it, decides not to walk through. I need to make some calls, Knox says. You need to not make calls. Vale's voice hardens. You need to not call Hale. You need to not call Callan. You need to not coordinate anything with anyone. Because if Internal Affairs determines that any communication between officers occurred after this became known, any attempt to align accounts or modify reports, that's obstruction. An obstruction with a federal judge as the complainant is not a departmental hearing. That's a federal case. Knox stares at him. The calculation is visible. Years of experience measuring risk against self-interest. The same arithmetic he has performed on sidewalks and in booking rooms, and in the quiet spaces where reports are shaped to fit narratives rather than facts. I understand, Knox says. He does not mean it. But he says it because saying it is the first step in a process he has practiced many times before. The process of appearing cooperative while protecting himself. Good. Vale stands. I'm going to the chief's office. Stay here. Say nothing. Touch nothing. He leaves. The door closes behind him. Knox sits at his desk for 90 seconds. Then he opens his email and types a message. One line. No subject. To an address he has used before. The same address Callan sent her supplemental confirmation to a week ago. Situation has changed. Need to talk. Not on department channels. He stares at the send button, deletes the draft, opens a new browser window instead, and clears his search history. A reflex that accomplishes nothing but reveals everything about the kind of officer he is. Across the city, Barrett Hale is off duty. That day off. He is at a sports bar in the university area, drinking light beer and watching college football on one of 7 screens above the bar. His phone is face down on the counter. He is not checking it. He is relaxed, or performing relaxation, which is the closest Hale gets to the real thing. Then the bartender changes one of the 7 screens to local news. The noon broadcast has been extended. A special segment about the investiture ceremony, running footage of the oath, the handshake with the chief judge, the remarks from both senators, the applause. Adrian Whitlock's face fills screen number 4, directly above Hale's left shoulder. The man sitting next to him, a stranger, mid-30s, drinking a craft IPA, nudges Hale's arm. Hey, isn't it something? First black federal judge in the Western District. About time. Hale turns, looks at screen 4, sees the face, the cut above the eyebrow. His cut, the one his sidewalk made, the one his knee ground into concrete. Sees the name. Sees the words consent decree, oversight. Scroll across the bottom of the screen in white text on a blue bar. His beer glass tilts in his hand. The liquid sloshes over the rim, running across his knuckles, dripping onto the bar. He does not notice. His body has locked. Every muscle frozen in the particular rigidity of a man whose brain is processing information that his nervous system has already recognized as catastrophic. The stranger glances at Hale's face, at the spilled beer, at the hand that has gone white-knuckled around the glass. You all right, man? Hale sets the glass down with exaggerated care, the way someone handles an object when their hands have started shaking and they do not want anyone to see. He picks up his phone. 3 missed calls from numbers he recognizes. Knox's cell, the precinct main line, and a number he does not want to see. The Charlotte-Mecklenburg Police Association's union representative. He does not return the calls. He pays his tab. Leaves a tip that is either very generous or the result of a man who cannot focus on arithmetic. Walks to his truck in the parking lot, sits behind the wheel. His hands grip the steering wheel, the way Adrian's hands gripped nothing except air and patience and the concrete under his face on that sidewalk earlier. The difference is this. Adrian knew exactly who he was the entire time. Hale is only now discovering what he has done. He stares through the windshield at a parking lot that looks exactly the same as it did earlier, but feels like a different country. His phone buzzes. Text from Knox. 2 words. Don't talk. Haley reads the message, reads it again, sets the phone on the passenger seat, starts the engine. Does not put the truck in gear. For a period of time, he sits in a running vehicle going nowhere, and the only sound is the engine idling and his own breathing, which he cannot seem to slow down. Later, after the investiture, three things happen before the day begins. The first, Internal Affairs officially reopens Adrian Whitlock's complaint. The intake investigator Renee Calder, many years in IA, the kind of career that turns cynics into pessimists and pessimists into meticulous documentarians, reads the file and requests all body camera footage from both encounters. Both of Monroe's recordings, Hale's camera from that day and the deactivation log from that day, which will show exactly when his camera stopped recording and whether the malfunction was manual or mechanical. The second, Marissa Cross, Adrian's attorney, files a comprehensive complaint package with the Department of Justice Civil Rights Division Western District Referral. The package includes Monroe body camera from that day with the profile fits audio, Callan's false supplemental report, Beatrice Shaw's Ring doorbell footage, Reed's phone recording from that day, the FOIA data on suspicious person calls, and a cover letter citing 18 U.S.C. Section 242, deprivation of rights under color of law, as the primary federal violation. The third, Adrian Whitlock signs a formal recusal order. He sits at his new desk in his new chambers on the 6th floor of the Jonas Federal Building. The nameplate on the door still smells like brass polish. The bookshelves are half filled. He has not finished unpacking the case law volumes that arrive from D.C. in boxes that sit stacked against the west wall. The desk is walnut, the chair is leather, the robe hangs on a stand behind the door, black fabric carrying the weight of an office that is both older than him and is of this morning complicated by him. He reads the recusal order one more time, 2 paragraphs, precise, filed under 28 U.S.C. Section 455A. A judge shall disqualify himself in any proceeding in which his impartiality might reasonably be questioned. The proceeding in question, the Charlotte Mecklenburg Police Department Federal Consent Decree, Case number 3:16-C-01021, the case he was appointed to oversee. The reason he moved to Charlotte, the work that brought him to Briarcliff and its sidewalks and its historical marker and its officers who saw a black man and saw only what they expected to see. He signs the order, dates it, places it in an envelope addressed to the Chief Judge of the Fourth Circuit, who will reassign the case to another judge, someone who has never been detained by CMPD officers, never had their property seized, never felt a knee between their shoulder blades on a sidewalk that was once someone else's front yard. The irony is precise and cruel. The very misconduct he was appointed to oversee has disqualified him from overseeing it. The officers who put him on the ground did not just assault a citizen, they removed their own oversight. Whether they are smart enough to have intended that outcome, or merely lucky enough to have produced it by accident, is a question Adrian will turn over in his mind for months. He seals the envelope, places it in his outbox, opens a different file. A drug trafficking case transferred from a retiring judge. Routine federal work that has nothing to do with police accountability or consent decrees or the distance between what America promises and what America delivers. He begins reading. His left knee aches under the desk. The cut above his eyebrow itches. The particular itch of healing, of skin knitting itself together, of the body doing what the body does even when the mind is occupied with larger repairs. Pause. The internal affairs investigation unfolds over the next period of time with the methodical grinding pace that characterizes institutional self-examination. Fast enough to demonstrate urgency, slow enough to suggest thoroughness, exactly calibrated to produce results that satisfy external observers without disturbing internal structures more than necessary. Investigator Calder interviews Monroe first. That day, a conference room at IA headquarters, 3 miles from the North Division precinct, deliberately separated from the command structure being investigated. Monroe arrives in civilian clothes. She brings her union representative. Departmental policy requires the option but does not require the presence. She chose to bring him. This means she is scared. B. People who are confident in their conduct do not bring lawyers to conversations about what they witnessed. Calder is direct. Officer Monroe, were you present during the initial contact with Adrian Whitlock on that day? Yes, ma'am. Describe the contact. Monroe describes it. Her account matches the body cam footage, which Calder has already reviewed, with one exception. She adds a detail the camera does not capture: the look on Hale's face when he first saw Adrian on the wall. He'd already decided, Monroe says. Her voice is careful, measured, the voice of someone choosing each word the way a person crosses a frozen lake, testing weight before committing. Before we got out of the car, he said, not to me, not officially, he said, another one. And I knew what that meant. What did it mean? It meant he'd already categorized the man before identification, before conversation, before anything. Did you object? The pause lasts 4 seconds. Monroe's union representative shifts in his chair. No. The word comes out small, honest, the size of an admission that will follow her for years. I didn't object. I should have. I stood there with my camera running, and I let it happen. Calder writes, does not react, does not offer comfort or condemnation, writes the words as they are spoken, because in IA investigations, words on paper are the only currency that survives the distance between what happened and what the department decides happened. Hale's interview is scheduled for that day. His union attorney, a man named Frank Durbin, who has represented CMPD officers in 47 disciplinary proceedings over many years, winning 31, requests a postponement. Calder grants a period of time. Standard, not generous, not punitive. A period of time. On that day, Hale sits across from Calder in the same conference room, Durbin beside him. Haley is in civilian clothes, jeans, polo shirt, the kind of outfit that tries to suggest normalcy. His hands rest on the table, fingers interlocked, the posture of a man who has been coached to appear calm. Calder places 2 documents on the table. The first is a still frame from Monroe's body cam, time-stamped footage. It shows Adrian seated on the wall, hands visible, notebook open, camera around his neck. No aggressive posture, no threatening gesture, a man sitting on a wall. The second is the audio transcript from the same footage. The highlighted passage reads, "Profile fits. Expensive camera, no reason to be here. You know the drill." Officer Hale, these are your words. Durbin intervenes. My client acknowledges the audio, but notes that the phrase "profile fits" refers to the caller's description, not any racial categorization. Calder does not blink. The caller described a black male with a camera. The subject is a black male with a camera. What additional profile is being referenced? Durbin adjusts his tie. Officer Hale will clarify that he was referring to behavioral indicators consistent with possible surveillance activity. What behavioral indicators? The subject was seated, both hands visible, on a public sidewalk. Officer Hale, what specific behavior triggered your concern? Hale opens his mouth, closes it, opens it again. He was photographing residences in a neighborhood where he doesn't live. He was photographing a public historical marker maintained by Mecklenburg County. Were you aware of the marker's existence before this encounter? Hale glances at Durbin. Durbin gives a nearly imperceptible nod. Answer the question. Keep it short. No. You were not aware that a public installation existed at the location where you detained a citizen for photographing the area around a public installation? The call described someone photographing houses. The call described someone photographing. The caller's interpretation, photographing houses, is not the same as the subject's actual activity, which your own body camera would have documented if your camera had been functioning. Which brings me to that day. She places a third document on the table, the body camera deactivation log, time-stamped footage, manual override, user Hale T, badge 4981. Your camera was manually deactivated earlier. You made contact with Mr. Whitlock on that day. Why? Durbin again? Equipment issues. Officer Hale reported a malfunction. The log shows manual override, not malfunction. Manual override requires a deliberate 3-second press of the power button. This was not an equipment failure. This was a choice. The room is quiet. I'll note for the record, Calder continues, that deactivating a body camera during a citizen contact is a direct violation of CMPD General Order 400-006, adopted under the Federal Consent Decree, the same consent decree now overseen by the federal judiciary, which, as you are aware, includes the man you arrested. Hale's interlocked fingers tighten until the knuckles go white. We have no further comments at this time, Durbin says. Calder closes her folder. This investigation is ongoing. Officer Hale is suspended from patrol effective immediately without pay, pending the board's review. Badge and weapon to be surrendered to your watch commander by end of shift today. Hale stands. His chair scrapes the floor. He walks to the door, stops, turns back. I didn't know who he was. The words come out before Durbin can stop them. Raw, defensive. The voice of a man who has realized that the defense he keeps reaching for, I didn't know, is not a defense at all, but an indictment. Calder looks up from her notes. That's the point, Officer Hale. You didn't know who he was, and you treated him the way you treated him anyway. Hale's hand moves to the edge of the table. His fingers curl around it the way they curled around Adrian's camera strap on that sidewalk. Reflexive, grasping, the instinct to hold on to something when everything else is slipping away. I want to be clear, Calder says, not unkindly, but with the finality of someone who has delivered this kind of assessment before. This investigation is not about who Mr. Whitlock turned out to be. It is about who you decided he was before you had any information. A different man, without a robe, without an attorney, without a pastor recording on his phone, might have experienced the same treatment and never had the resources to report it. That man deserves the same standard of conduct you failed to meet. The badge does not exist to protect you from accountability. It exists to hold you to it. Hale says nothing. Durbin says nothing. The room is silent except for the ventilation system and the soft scratch of Calder's pen closing the file. They leave. The door clicks shut behind them. Calder sits alone for a while, reviewing her notes, circling the phrases she will emphasize in her board report. Profile fits. You know the drill? Let's see what shakes loose. 3 sentences that, taken together, describe not an isolated incident, but a practiced methodology. The language of officers who have done this, enough times that the words have become shorthand for a system they no longer question. She closes the file, opens the next one. Callan. Callan's interview is that day. Her attorney, separate counsel from Hale. A strategic decision that signals the department expects their interests to diverge. Argues that the supplemental report was based on information provided by Officer Hale during a verbal debriefing and constituted good faith documentation of a colleague's observations. Calder places Beatrice Shaw's Ring doorbell footage on the screen. Time-stamped footage. Adrian standing beside the historical marker, both hands holding his notebook at chest height, both hands visible, both hands stationary. No movement toward his waistband, no furtive gestures, no pre-flight indicators, nothing. Officer Callan, Your supplemental report describes furtive hand movements toward his waistband area. And this footage, timestamped during the period your report describes, shows no such movements. You were not present during this encounter. You were on patrol in Zone 6, 6 miles from the location. Explain the discrepancy. Callan's attorney requests a recess. Calder grants a period of time. When they return, Callan reads a prepared statement. I documented information as it was communicated to me. I believe the information was accurate. I had no reason to question Officer Hale's account. Did you verify any of the details before filing? Verification wasn't yes or no, Officer Callan, or no. Calder notes the answer. Then she opens Callan's personnel file and reads aloud, not for Callan's benefit, but for the record. In the past, a period of time, you have filed 11 supplemental reports on cases you were not assigned to and encounters you did not witness. 7 of those reports describe furtive movements or pre-flight indicators. All 7 subjects were black males. All 7 reports were filed between 3 and later the incidents they describe. All 7 use identical or near identical phrasing. She closes the file. This board will be referring your case to the Mecklenburg County District Attorney for review. Under North Carolina General Statute 14-225, which addresses the filing of false police reports. Additionally, the FBI's Charlotte Field Office has been notified under 18 U.S.C. Section 242 for potential federal civil rights violations. Callan's attorney objects. Calder overrules. In administrative proceedings, the investigator is not a judge. But in this room, on this day, with this evidence, the distinction is academic. Knox's interview that day. His attorney argues procedural compliance. The detention was based on a citizen's report. The supervisor's response was proportional. The extended ID verification was within departmental discretion. Calder plays the Ring doorbell audio. The 47 seconds of phone conversation captured before the first encounter on that day. Hale's voice. Yeah, same guy. He's back, sitting on the wall again. Unidentified voice. Same one from the Slack? Same one. Camera and everything. Whitcomb called it in already. And I'm about to have a conversation with him. Everett says, hold him if you can. Let's see what shakes loose. The unidentified voice references Everett, Calder says. Your first name is Everett. The phrase, let's see what shakes loose appears in 2 locations. This recording and Officer Monroe body cam audio, where you use the same words upon arriving at the scene moments later. Do you dispute that you coordinated this detention before arriving? Knox's attorney objects to the characterization of coordination. Calder rephrases. Did you communicate with Officer Hale before being dispatched to the scene? Knox's attorney advises his client not to answer pending further review. Calder notes the refusal. Sergeant Knox, the board's preliminary finding is that you authorized and supervised a detention without articulable, reasonable suspicion in violation of the Fourth Amendment, as incorporated under departmental policy. You are reassigned from patrol supervision to administrative desk duty, effective immediately, pending the board's final disposition. Knox's jaw works, the grinding, the same expression from the sidewalk, composure and contempt fighting for the same face. He says nothing. He is, at last, taking advice. This story has already reached the point where most people stop scrolling. But the next section is where the real institutional reckoning begins. And it's unlike anything you've seen in these cases. Stay with it. Captain Vale's review is conducted by the Chief of Police's office directly. His rank places him above the standard IA board's jurisdiction. The review is quieter, less formal, more political. The finding, supervisory negligence. Vale closed a formal complaint without investigation, without forwarding to IA, without reviewing available evidence. He visited Adrian's cell alone, without documentation, without other officers present, and made statements that the complainant interpreted as intimidation. The outcome? Administrative leave. Not termination, not demotion. Leave, with the understanding that his return to duty depends on the consent decree monitor's assessment of the department's good faith compliance efforts. Vale accepts the leave. He has many years of pension vesting in a period of time. The arithmetic is simple. Keep quiet, wait, come back, retire. The system's self-protection pattern runs like clockwork. Denial, paid leave, quiet process, minimal retraining, return to normal. Vale has seen it happen to other officers. He never imagined being on the receiving end, but the machinery does not distinguish between those who operate it and those it processes. It simply grinds. The DOJ Civil Rights Division responds to Marissa Cross's complaint package on that day. The response is not an indictment. It is not a press conference. It is a letter, 4 pages, single-spaced on Department of Justice letterhead, bearing the signature of an assistant attorney general whose name appears in federal civil rights cases the way certain surgeons' names appear on research papers, frequently and with authority. The letter states, "The department has reviewed the material submitted in connection with the treatment of Judge Adrian T. Whitlock by officers of the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Police Department. The documented conduct, including detention without probable cause, seizure of personal property, deactivation of body camera equipment, filing of a false supplemental report by an officer not present at the incident, and supervisory failure to investigate, is consistent with patterns identified in the department's ongoing monitoring of the CMPD consent decree. The department is incorporating Judge Whitlock's case into its existing pattern or practice review under 42 U.S.C. Section 14,141. We are requesting an amendment to the consent decree's monitoring provisions, including expanded body camera audit requirements, mandatory supervisor accountability protocols, an independent civilian review of suspicious person response patterns in designated patrol zones. Additionally, the department has referred the individual conduct of Officers Hale and Callan to the FBI's Charlotte Field Office for investigation under 18 U.S.C. Section 242. Not an indictment, not yet, a referral, an amendment request, the federal government's equivalent of clearing its throat before speaking, a sound that is quiet, but that everyone in the room recognizes as the beginning of something they cannot stop. Reverend Odom reads the letter at the same time, forwarded by Marissa. He sits in his office at New Hope AME, surrounded by many years of ministry, photographs of baptisms and funerals and community meetings, letters of thanks and letters of grief, the accumulated evidence of a life spent in the gap between what churches promise and what neighborhoods endure. He sets the letter down, picks up his phone, calls the president of the Charlotte NAACP chapter, then the editor of the Charlotte Post, then a community organizer he has worked with for many years on police accountability issues. The DOJ is moving, he says to each of them, not fast, not far, but moving. And they're going to need community testimony when they amend the consent decree. We need a list of every person stopped, detained, or arrested in Briarcliff and the surrounding patrol zones over the past many years. Not just the FOIA data we already have. All of it, every zone, every call, every outcome. By the end of the day, he has assembled a coalition of 11 organizations and 43 individuals willing to provide testimony. Some are recent victims. Recent? Some are parents of victims. Some are officers, active and retired, who have watched the system malfunction from the inside and are tired of pretending it works. The coalition will not change the law. It will not produce arrests. It will not reverse what happened on a sidewalk in Briarcliff. But it will do something that institutions rely on not happening. It will make the pattern visible, countable, impossible to reduce to the department's preferred phrase, an isolated incident. 23 calls, 21 black subjects, 9 arrests, 0 convictions. Those numbers are no longer statistics in a FOIA response. They are people. And people, once they start talking, are harder to redact than emails. Marisa reads the letter to Adrian in his chambers. He listens with his hands flat on his desk, the way he listened in the interview room at the precinct. Still controlled, every word processed and filed. They're not moving fast, Marisa says. They're not supposed to move fast. They're supposed to move correctly. The FBI referral is real. Hale and Callan could face federal charges? Could. The word does a lot of work in that sentence. Adrian looks at the letter. Pattern or practice review, consent decree amendment, expanded monitoring. This is the system responding to itself. The question is whether the response changes anything or just rearranges the furniture. It changes things for the 21 people in that FOIA data, the ones who were stopped and detained and arrested for existing in a neighborhood. If the monitoring catches what happened to them, the word sits between them like a stone. I can't oversee the consent decree, Adrian says. I signed the recusal. Another judge will handle it. And that judge will read the amendment request and order expanded monitoring, and the department will comply or appear to comply, and quarterly reports will be filed and reviewed and debated. And in a period of time, we'll see whether anything actually changed. That's frustrating. That's the law. He pauses. The law is frustrating. It moves slowly because moving slowly is supposed to prevent mistakes. The problem is that slowness also prevents accountability, and the people who benefit from the slowness are rarely the people who need the speed. Later, Charlotte settles into the gray, wet, cold that marks the Piedmont's version of winter. Outcomes arrive, not with the drama of, but with the quiet thud of administrative envelopes and departmental memoranda, the bureaucratic aftermath of institutional failure, measured in suspensions and reassignments and press releases, carefully worded to acknowledge wrongdoing without admitting liability. Hale, suspended without pay, a period of time. His union files a grievance challenging the suspension's length. The grievance will be heard later. In the meantime, Hale collects no paycheck, carries no badge, and spends his days in an apartment where the television stays off because every local news broadcast reminds him of what he did and who he did it to. His fiancée, a dental hygienist who knew he was a police officer but never asked what kind, moves her things to her mother's house on the second week. She does not say why. She does not need to. The footage from Odom's phone has been viewed 400,000 times on social media, and the comment section beneath it is a permanent record of public judgment that no grievance hearing will erase. Callan referred to the Mecklenburg County District Attorney for potential charges under NCGS. Section 14-225, filing a false police report. The DA's office responds with the phrase that has become the anthem of prosecutorial caution. Under review, no timeline for a charging decision. Callan is suspended with pay. The distinction from Hale's without pay suspension reflecting the department's calculation that her misconduct was documentary rather than physical. She retains her salary while the system deliberates whether writing lies in official documents about a man she never met constitutes a crime or merely a professional lapse. The answer depends on who is asking and who is answering. And in Mecklenburg County, those two groups share more members than either would publicly admit. Knox. Written reprimand. Reassigned from patrol supervision to administrative desk duty in the records division. A bureaucratic purgatory where his authority extends to filing systems and requisition forms. He will remain there pending the consent decree monitor's assessment. His pension continues to vest. His rank is technically intact. The punishment is positional, not structural, a change of scenery designed to suggest accountability without producing it. Veil. Administrative leave. His office is cleared by a subordinate who packs many years of memorabilia into 4 boxes. His name remains on the command roster with an asterisk that, in departmental shorthand, means inactive pending administrative process. He tells his wife he's taking a break. She asks for how long. He does not answer because he does not know. Marla Whitcomb. No charges. Calling 911 is constitutionally protected speech, and prosecuting a caller for reporting a suspicious person, even when the suspicion is rooted in racial bias rather than criminal behavior, sets a precedent that no district attorney in North Carolina wants to establish. However, Cross's complaint includes Whitcomb's pattern of calls, 14 from the same number over a period of time targeting black individuals, resulting in 0 convictions. In the consent decree monitor's data file, the pattern will appear in the next quarterly report. Whitcomb will not be named, but the numbers will speak for themselves. The department issues a press release on that day. The Charlotte-Mecklenburg Police Department takes seriously any allegation of misconduct. Following a thorough internal review, the department has taken appropriate personnel actions and is implementing enhanced training protocols for body camera compliance, citizen contact procedures, and report writing standards. Additionally, the department is cooperating fully with the Department of Justice's ongoing review of consent decree compliance, enhanced training protocols, cooperating fully, the language of institutional response, words that sound like change and taste like permanence. What the press release does not mention, what no press release from any police department in America has ever mentioned, is the texture of the damage. 21 people stopped in Briarcliff over a period of time. 9 arrested. Each arrest meaning handcuffs and booking photographs and property receipts and hours in holding cells and the particular humiliation of being processed through a system designed for criminals despite having committed no crime. Each arrest meaning a record that appears in background checks, a gap in employment that requires explanation, a story that families carry like a bruise, invisible to strangers but tender to the touch for years. Adrian's case will make the news. The other 20 cases will not. The asymmetry is its own kind of injustice, the suggestion that what happened matters more because of who it happened to rather than because of what was done. Reverend Otom, in his quieter moments, will sit in his office at New Hope AME and wonder whether any of this would have happened if the man on the sidewalk had not turned out to be a federal judge, whether the complaint would have been reopened, whether the body camera footage would have been reviewed, whether the FOIA data would have been counted. He already knows the answer. He has known it for many years. The answer is the reason he went to that sidewalk in the first place and the reason he will keep going. To every sidewalk, every park bench, every public space where a person's right to exist is treated as a privilege that can be revoked by a phone call. The numbers are not statistics, they are people. And people, once they start talking, are harder to redact than emails. Adrian reads the press release in his chambers, sets it down, picks up a case file, a drug trafficking matter, evidence chain questions, suppression motion hearing, scheduled later, work that requires his attention and does not require his heart. His heart is elsewhere, has been elsewhere since a sidewalk in Briarcliff split the skin above his eyebrow and taught him something he thought he already knew. That the law protects power before it protects people, and that the distance between a robe and a sidewalk is shorter than any oath can bridge. The consent decree has been reassigned to Judge Patricia Kellerman, a 63-year-old Clinton appointee with a reputation for thorough, unhurried decision-making and a willingness to impose sanctions that most judges prefer to threaten but never deliver. Adrian does not know Kellerman personally. He knows her record. It is solid, fair. The kind of jurisprudence that produces results measured in years rather than headlines. Whether those results will reach the officers in the Briarcliff patrol zone, the ones who answer calls from women like Marla Whitcomb, and detain men like Adrian Whitlock, and file reports like Nora Callan, is a question that cannot be answered by a consent decree or a press release or a suspension. It can only be answered by time. And time in the law is the most expensive currency there is. That day, the holiday break approaches. Courts wind down. Cases are continued. Clerks organize files for the upcoming term. Then Adrian finds a note on his desk. His clerk, a 27-year-old recent law graduate named Terry, whose organizational skills border on the supernatural, has left it on top of his afternoon correspondence. Officer Mira Monroe, CMPD, called then. Requests a period of time with you, says it's personal, emphasizes no attorney present, left a callback number. Adrian reads the note twice, sets it on the corner of his desk next to a paperweight shaped like a gavel that Alden Rhodes gave him at the investiture. A gift with a card that read, "Use it gently, use it justly, use it." He does not call Monroe back that day or the next. He's not sure what she wants to say. An apology would not undo the sidewalk. Testimony might strengthen the IA case or the federal case if charges are filed, but would cost Monroe her career. She is 24 years old, a period of time on the force, still in her probationary period. Cooperating with an investigation against senior officers is the kind of decision that produces commendations and training manuals and termination letters in real life. Whatever she is offering, it comes with complications he is not ready to calculate. Not because he lacks the capacity, but because the calculation requires him to weigh her future against his past, her courage against his pain, her risk against his need for accountability, and he is not sure. Sitting in chambers with his robe behind the door and his recusal on file and his knee still aching when the weather turns cold, whether he is ready to be the person who makes that calculation. The note sits on the corner of his desk unanswered, waiting. That day, 2 items arrive in the same afternoon. The first is a discovery document from Marissa Cross, forwarded from the IA investigation. During the evidence gathering phase, Marissa requested all email communications between Knox and precinct command staff for the period that day through that day. The department's legal counsel complied partially. One email chain dated that day, the day after Adrian's first detention, was produced with heavy redactions. Adrian reads it in his chambers with the overhead light angled to cut the glare from the black marker that has been drawn across 8 of 11 lines of text. Subject line R.E. Briarcliff follow-up. Sender: Sergeant Everett Knox. Recipient: redacted. 3 visible lines among the blackout, handled per previous discussion. No further ID obtained. Recommend monitoring. The rest, 8 lines, is obscured. The redactions were authorized by the city attorney's office under attorney-client privilege, a legal shield that protects communications made in the course of seeking or providing legal advice. It is a legitimate privilege. It is also, in cases like this, a convenient one. A door that closes over exactly the information that would explain who Knox was talking to, what previous discussion he was referencing, and why monitoring a citizen who had been cleared and released was considered necessary. Marissa has filed a motion to compel production of the unredacted email. The motion is pending before Judge Kellerman, who now oversees the consent decree and, by extension, all discovery disputes related to CMPD conduct. This could take months, Marissa says over the phone. I know, the city attorney will fight it. Attorney-client privilege is the strongest shield they have. I know that too, but the recipient field is interesting. If it's another officer, privilege doesn't apply. It's not a legal communication. If it's the city attorney, privilege might hold, but raises the question of why the city attorney was involved in a routine patrol detention the day after it happened, before any complaint was filed. Adrian is quiet. He holds the redacted email the way he held his notebook on the wall in Briarcliff, both hands careful, aware of its weight. Someone knew, he says. Someone outside the precinct was aware of my detention within a period of time and was providing direction on how to handle it. The phrase per previous discussion implies an ongoing arrangement, not a one-time conversation, a pattern. Recommend monitoring, Marissa quotes. Monitoring whom? You? Black men in Briarcliff? Anyone who photographs the historical marker? The questions do not have answers, not yet. The redactions hold them prisoner, and the legal process that might free them is as slow as the process that created them. Adrian sets the email on his desk. It will sit there for weeks, a document that says almost nothing and implies almost everything. A page where the black ink covering the words is more eloquent than the words it hides. The second item arrives then. A manila envelope. No return address, no postmark. Hand-delivered to the courthouse mailroom. Logged by the front desk. Marshal then, the marshal notes, envelope left at security desk. No individual identified. Envelope screened, cleared. Adrian opens it at his desk. Inside, a USB drive, matte black, no label, and a handwritten note on unlined paper, written in careful block letters, not unlike his own handwriting, which is either coincidence or a message within a message. The note reads, "There are more. Check Zone 7. 3 sentences. 10 words. No signature. No context. No explanation of what more means, or what Zone 7 contains, or who left this envelope at a federal courthouse security desk on that day earlier Christmas." Adrian holds the USB drive between his thumb and forefinger. It weighs almost nothing. A sliver of plastic and silicone small enough to fit inside a closed fist, light enough to forget in a pocket. Capable of holding enough data to reshape investigations and end careers, and prove patterns that institutions spend millions of dollars trying to obscure. He does not plug it in, not yet. A federal judge does not insert unknown USB drives into government computers. The security implications alone, malware, chain of custody contamination, potential entrapment, are sufficient to justify caution. But caution is not the only thing stopping him. He's also thinking about what it means that someone with access to the federal courthouse, someone who knows his chamber's number, someone who writes in block letters, has decided that the official channels are not enough. That the IA investigation and the DOJ review and the consent decree amendment and the slow grinding machinery of institutional accountability are not moving fast enough or deep enough or in the right direction. Someone inside the system has decided to go around it. He sets the USB drive on his desk besides Monroe's unanswered message and the redacted email from Knox, from 3 objects, 3 unanswered questions, 3 doors, and behind each one a room he cannot see from where he is sitting. The gavel-shaped paperweight from Alden Roads catches the late afternoon light. Use it gently. Use it justly. Use it. That day, Christmas Eve. Adrian drives to Briarcliff Estates, not to document, not to photograph, not to stand on the sidewalk where his blood dried on concrete and his notebook lay open in the cool breeze. He drives there because the historical marker is still standing on its stone pedestal at the corner of Magnolia Lane and Briarcliff Drive, and the words on it have not changed. This site was formerly the location of the Lincoln Heights community, established 1891 by freed persons. Approximately 340 residents were displaced between that year and that year through municipal land acquisition proceedings. No compensation was provided to 127 of the displaced families. He reads it the way he read it the first time. Slowly, completely, with the attention of someone who understands that history is not what happened, but what is remembered. And that what is remembered depends entirely on who is doing the remembering and whether anyone is listening. 340 people lived here, built homes here, raised children here, were removed from here by a system that valued their land more than their lives and compensated fewer than 2/3 of them for the theft. Many years later, a different system wearing different uniforms, carrying different authority, operating under different names, told Adrian Whitlock that he did not belong on the sidewalk where those families once lived. The pattern did not start with Hale. It did not start with Knox or Callan or Vale, or the 911 call from a woman who saw threat in the act of sitting still. The pattern started before the consent decree, before the police department, before the sidewalk itself was poured. The pattern started when someone decided that this land and the people on it were problems to be solved rather than communities to be honored. And every system built on that foundation, from eminent domain to patrol zones to suspicious person calls, carries the original sin forward generation after generation, badge after badge, call after call. Adrian stands at the marker for a while. He does not write in his notebook, does not photograph anything, just stands, his hands in his pockets, his breath making small clouds in the cool air, his left knee aching in the cold. A car passes, then another. No one stops. No one calls 911. It is Christmas Eve, and even suspicion takes a holiday. He drives back to his hotel. He has not yet found a permanent residence, has not yet decided whether Charlotte will be a place he stays or a place he endures, and parks in the lot outside room 214. The parking lot light still flickers. He has stopped counting the interval. Inside, he hangs his jacket, aligns his shoes, opens his notebook to the last entry. Below the date and the record of his visit to Briarcliff, he writes, "They still never ask." Closes the notebook, sets it on the nightstand beside the gavel paperweight he brought from Chambers. On the desk across the room, the USB drive sits in its manila envelope, waiting. Monroe's callback number sits beside it, folded into quarters. The redacted email is in his briefcase, 8 lines of black ink hiding answers that the city attorney's office has decided the public and the judge do not need to see. 3 threads, unresolved, pulling at the fabric of a story that is not finished, cannot be finished, because the systems that produced it are still operating and the people who run them are still employed. And the policies that enabled the misconduct are still written in the same language they were written in before Adrian Whitlock's face appeared on a television screen and changed the arithmetic. The suspension will end. The grievance will be heard. The DA will decide about Callan or will decide not to decide, which is its own kind of decision. The consent decree monitor will file a quarterly report that uses words like progress and compliance and ongoing. The DOJ will continue its review at the speed of federal bureaucracy, which is the speed of caution, which is the speed of an institution that measures success in decades rather than days. And somewhere in Charlotte, a woman named Marla Whitcomb will look out her kitchen window and see someone she does not recognize walking on a sidewalk she considers hers, and she will pick up her phone and the pattern will repeat. Or it will not. The call will be made, or it will not. The officers will respond the way they have always responded, or they will not. The policy was announced. Whether it would be enforced, whether enforcement would survive the slow erosion of institutional memory, the retirement of the officers who were disciplined, the arrival of new officers who are not present for the reckoning and therefore do not carry its weight, only time would tell. And time in the law is the one resource that no one controls and everyone runs out of. A new year begins. Adrian's chambers are fully unpacked now. The books are shelved. The desk is organized. The nameplate on the door has lost its brass polish smell and settled into the particular dullness of an object that belongs where it has been placed. He handles cases, drug trafficking, Guam, immigration, white-collar fraud. A complex civil rights case involving employment discrimination that, in its facts and its legal arguments, echoes the larger questions his own experience raised. But from a distance, the way a surgeon can study anatomy without remembering the time anatomy was studied on him. He does not talk about Briarcliff in his courtroom, does not reference it in his opinions, does not allow it to bleed into the judicial work that requires his impartiality, his distance, his capacity to see facts without the distortion of personal injury, but he carries it in his left knee, which still aches, in the thin scar above his eyebrow, which has faded to a line that is visible only in certain light, in the aligned shoes and sorted shirts and breathing in counts of 4, habits that preceded the sidewalk, but that now carry the additional weight of having been tested. He carries it in the 3 objects on his desk that he has not addressed. The USB drive, The callback number, the redacted email, 3 doors, still closed. On that day, he makes a decision about one of them. He picks up the phone on his desk, dials the callback number from the folded note. 2 rings. A voice, young, nervous, the voice of someone who has been waiting for a call she was not sure would come. Officer Monroe. This is Judge Whitlock. You asked for a while. A breath quick, the sound of someone who has rehearsed this conversation in her head for weeks and is now realizing that rehearsal and reality share very little in common. Yes, sir. Thank you for calling. I have time now if you'd like to talk. Not on the phone. Could we in person, my chambers? Come through the judge's entrance on East Trade. Tell the marshal you have an appointment. Yes, sir. Thank you, Judge. Officer Monroe? Yes. You should know, whatever you tell me, I cannot use it. I've recused from the consent decree. I have no jurisdiction over your department, your case, or your career. If you're looking for someone who can act on what you know, you need Internal Affairs or the DOJ or Marissa Cross. A pause, longer than the others. I know, Monroe says. I'm not looking for someone who can act. I'm looking for someone who will listen. Adrian closes his eyes. The weight of the request, its simplicity, its impossibility, the way it mirrors every moment on that sidewalk when he needed someone to listen and no one did, settles over him like a robe. Then, he says, I'll listen. He hangs up, sets the phone on its cradle, looks at the 2 remaining objects on his desk, the USB drive and the redacted email, and wonders whether listening is enough. Whether justice is possible in a system that treats accountability as an interruption rather than a purpose, whether the law he swore to uphold can be stretched far enough to cover the distance between what happened and what should happen next. Outside his window, Charlotte moves through the afternoon, traffic and commerce, and the ordinary business of a city that has already begun to forget what happened on a sidewalk in Breercliff, the way cities always forget, the way forgetting is the system's most reliable defense against change. But Adrian Whitlock does not forget, cannot forget. The scar will not let him. The knee will not let him. The notebook, the one they took, the one they returned, the one they never read, will not let him. He opens it now, turns to a blank page, writes the date and a single entry in his block letters. Monroe. Soon. Listen. Below it, after a space, one more line. The question was never who I am. The question is who they chose to see. He closes the notebook, aligns it with the edge of his desk. The gavel paperweight catches the afternoon light. Brass and weight, and the promise of an office that was designed many years ago to be better than the people who hold it. Whether it is, whether it can be, whether the distance between an oath and a sidewalk can ever be closed by anything other than the slow, exhausting, imperfect work of showing up and trying again. That question does not have an answer, not yet. But the courthouse is still open, the robes are still worn, the oath is still spoken. And somewhere in a precinct break room on the north side of Charlotte, a television screen carries the news. Stories about budgets and weather and a city council meeting where the police department's quarterly consent decree report will be discussed in public session for the first time since the policy changes were announced. The report will use words like progress and compliance and ongoing commitment to reform. And in a federal courtroom 6 miles away, a judge with a scar above his eyebrow and a notebook full of block letters will read those words and measure them against the only standard that matters. Not what the system says it will do, but what the system does when no one is watching, when the cameras are off, when the sidewalks are empty, and when the person on the ground does not have a robe waiting for him in the morning. That standard has not been met. Not yet. But the notebook is open, and Adrian Whitlock is still writing. Thank you for taking the time to watch this video today. If you found the content helpful, please remember to like and subscribe so you won't miss our upcoming episodes. If you have any questions or suggestions, feel free to leave a comment below. We are always here to listen.